All right, everybody. Welcome back, my friends, to the podcast that never ends, Arena of Ideas podcast, of course. I'm your host and, of course, the creator of Arena of Ideas. Today, we have a special event, a wonderful event. This is now the fourth opportunity, I call it, to have somebody else on the microphone with me. And we're going to start a comprehensive series of different episodes with him. It's Chillin' and Chat. It's Chatting and Chillin' with Chris, part one. This is Star Wars versus Star Trek. It's not really versus because they're two different dynamics, but that's what we're basically going to get into. I think it's awesome. It's great. I try to get people enlisted in coming here and being on this thing and getting their voice out there as to what they want to talk about. And I don't know. I guess you just keep taking no's all the time until someone says yes. And that yes is a very awesome, wonderful, dynamic person. His name is Chris. He's from Pueblo, Colorado, out of here in Pueblo, Colorado. He knows who he is. Of course he does. All right. So anyway, Beyond Buzz Lightyear, Toy Story, To Infinity and Beyond from Buzz Lightyear from Toy Story, a great way to open this introspective and informative conversation about two of the greatest franchises space has to offer. What do you think about that, Chris?
Well, first, thanks for having me on, and I think it sounds great. It's three great franchises that you're looking to get into there, so looking forward to having the conversation with you.
Awesome. So basically, what do you? So you definitely wanted to talk about these two different franchises.
Oh yeah, no, I'm a huge Star Wars fan, so I can definitely get into that one with you. Star Trek, I've kept up with a lot of the more modern things, the older things I've read up on a little bit, but I'm definitely more of a Wars fan than a Trekkie. Right,
and so I thought it was the amazing part about this whole thing is that I've been alive for both franchises, and so. I mean, yes, they had NASA and they flew to the moon, and so you always had an interest in space and everything else. But for the most part, before, if you will, Star Trek really got into the mix of this whole thing, sci-fi and then space and everything else was clunky. It was kind of, it was okay, actually. Stanley Kubrick's 2001 A Space Odyssey was something that came out and actually kind of opened a lot of people's eyes to what's out there and what's possible. But it's these two franchises, one starting early and one starting later into the 70s, that really sent everything, if you will, into the stratosphere.
Visually, yes, absolutely. Prior to that, you had multiple books and series that would take you into space, or radio, even radio stations that had played things such as War of the Worlds that would take you into space. So these are just the visual aspects that have captivated audiences for years now.
Wow, now you know. In this whole thing, when I did my research and everything, you're right. The War of the Worlds thing. Look at you in the poll on War of the Worlds, my friend. Great poll. So anyway, basically, the prodigies of the interplanetary explorations, greatest narrations, Gene Roddenberry of Star Trek, and George Lucas of Star Wars. Of course, at the beginning, they're the ones that created those two series, but now I guess you were saying that they've been taken over?
You know, I'm not quite sure as far as the Trek one goes. I'm sure that each director probably has their own visions and they have to bounce it across a creative team. But as far as Wars goes, yes, Lucas is no longer in control of the franchise. Disney definitely has control of that. They bought them out several years ago. I think that's where we've gotten a lot of our most recent content.
Right, exactly. Basically what happened is, after a while, Gene Roddenberry kind of lost his edge. He wasn't doing enough to really push forward the Star Trek genre. They were really pushed into a situation where, you know, you don't compare yourself with the neighbor or anything else, but every time they do something, you want to do something more. They saw Star Wars doing more, and so they decided to force him actually and his wife to step away from the entire process. They forced him out, kind of like what we have presently.
That. Wow, interesting.
Yeah, what happened is that, like I said, Gene Roddenberry was basically on every set. His wife was like in every one of the shows for the longest time, and they were doing this whole thing. Well, he just kept in a rut, basically, never really getting anywhere. It seemed like everything was slowing down instead of speeding up to hyperspeed or whatever.
Okay.
And so what they did was they pushed him aside, forced him out, and then they let other creative people in their process work their way into what was going on.
That's pretty interesting. Okay. No, so for the Star Wars franchise, Lucas had definite control over the franchise for quite a bit of time, and he sold to Disney, so it wasn't a hostile takeover. Nobody, right. I mean, things were kind of stagnant, and he talked about doing an additional movies, but hadn't really committed to anything. And when Disney bought it or bought the rights, they gave us The Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, the what is it, The Last Skywalker or something? I can't remember what
something like that.
Yeah,
I have the entire timeline. I'm not, like I said, I'm not an aficionado on both of these franchises. I'm not, but you know what? I love it. And again, the Arena of Ideas podcast it's your podcast. I'm the host. If more people know more about what's going on, guess what? Darn right, I'm getting them on here to make this whole process go.
Okay.
And anyway, so basically, like I said, it's an amazing beginning. At least Lucas, and you're right, he basically.
He told what he wanted to and then passed the torch, yeah.
And he figured that they could actually take it further than where...
Investment-wise, I imagine so, yeah. We're in a different direction. And I don't know that his visions weren't all that bad. I mean, he had ideas for what he wanted to do for movies. It was just time for him to go. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, well, like I said...
His old canon, so the movies he wrote himself, obviously, but then he also had comic books, and he had and books that came out. Shucks, I want to say later into the '80s because people were really into the stories.
Yeah.
And the authors would all have to go back to George Lucas and okay each and every storyline before any of it could ever come out. So Lucas did do, as far as the old canon went, he had quite a death grip over the entire franchise. It was a beautiful franchise.
Yeah, and he was very intuitive and insightful. He originally coming out of college, I believe he did a movie called THX.
Okay.
And this futuristic movie is basically, I don't know how many minutes it was, but he and Steven Spielberg actually had gotten together and did a few projects and side projects together. And again, this is me doing the research again, which
beautiful research.
Eye-opening.
Yeah.
This whole thing's been eye-opening. And so Chris basically did a quick timeline. He basically went up and said, look, you know what? It was Wednesday. Here it is Saturday. And he goes, Mike, let's do it. So then I'm like, okay, I'm cramming for a test. I'm doing this. It's a crash course, but it's been an eye-opening experience, an awesome, wonderful opportunity of experience. And so anyway, he did this in college. He did this movie called THX. He and Steven Spielberg worked together. And it was a futuristic look at a society and things like that. And the society was trying to run him down and try to get the character in the actual show. And so he was finding ways throughout this labyrinth and this maze in this movie to try and escape. It's a futuristic look. So I think this kind of drove him and kind of put him in the channel of doing Star Wars and all these other things.
The very little that I do know about George Lucas is that, at least as far as the original movie went, he really did not think he was going to be all that successful, and it was really just something that fandom grabbed a hold of and took to an entirely different stratosphere. After Empire Strikes Back came out and everybody was questioning whether Vader was Luke's father, I mean, there was another 10 years before Return of the Jedi came out, and he really built a big question in everybody's mind, and it was an iconic villain. It was a great story that a lot captivated audiences.
Right.
Captivated me from a very young age. I think I got to learn with the original movies, but then as I was a kid, they did the remakes, and then everybody got to do Phantom Menace, and now we're all getting to see this. They just finished up this last Skywalker saga, which was a great little storyline as well. And it sounded like they were going to get ready to do a few others, but The Mandalorian seems to be the thing that a lot of people are really excited for. And Baby Grogu's crazy cute, so everybody, you can't really be upset with that.
No, it's every other shirt, every other bumper sticker, everything that was anything basically had the baby on there. Well, the child.
Yes, no longer the child. Grogu. He does have a name. Grogu.
Grogu?
Yes.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
I had to come all the way to Pueblo, Colorado to talk to the dynamically wonderful, intense, intelligent, wonderful person known as Citizen Chris. So basically, the two dynamics, and again, doing all my research and everything, I found is that, of course, George Lucas had his own light and sound. It's called Light and Sound Studio or something like that. Then he's got his Lucas Limited Sound, the different dynamic sound and everything else. He created that system. That system's even around today, and people are still using his amazing technology, even down to when he would film his movies and everything, down to the models and everything. What an amazing process! But basically, Star Wars starting out in the movie. So here's the two dynamics of the two, and everybody tries to compare Star Trek versus Star Wars. Well, it's not really, because it's two different dynamics. You got Star Wars, where it's on the big screen and everything else. Star Trek starts on the small screen, because again, that's kind of how everybody kind of way back in the 60s, that's how everybody started. And then Star Trek worked to movies, and Star Wars worked to
the small screen.
So they kind of did two different dynamic parallels.
I hadn't really thought about it like that. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, research, absolutely. Yeah. Star Trek is still they're still very much so on TV. They've got a few series that they're doing. A very popular one is that Lower Decks. That's a pretty popular little cartoon that they're doing. So, yeah, I really hadn't thought of it like that. That's pretty interesting. And yet you're saying that Star Trek was driven by Star Wars. So right around the time that the Star Wars came out, you're saying that that's when Star Trek was like, we need to be in the movies.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect point. Very poignant. What's happening is in '76, I believe, is when the first movie came out. The New Hope began, New Hope, or whatever it is. A New Hope.
Right.
Again, I'm still working on this.
Initially, it was Star Wars, because he didn't think he was going to get
exactly. It's called Star Wars, and then they actually renamed it to actually name
A New Hope. Yes, you're correct.
So what happened is that Star Trek kind of was the leader. They kind of worried about nothing else. Now the neighbor moves in, which is Star Wars. Now all of a sudden, well, they just did their line. Okay, or like for Christmas time, as a metaphor for Christmas time. Okay, he put up a tree in his front yard. So then they got to do Star Wars and Star Trek both put trees. Now the lights, and it's kind of like Clark Griswold, if you will. I'm wearing a shirt of Clark Griswold, so now he has to have more lights and everything else. So now they go back and forth, and so really through competition, it really raised the bar when it came to both of the series turning into movies and the movie turning into series. It's awesome, because then we, as the people, through the optics of watching and enjoying and appreciating it all, we get a chance to sit there, grab the popcorn, get the ticket, grab the popcorn, and sit and just watch the show. And
enjoy the franchises that are being told. Interesting. I had not even thought of any of those parts.
It forced a hand, because, again, there was other things out there, and other things started copying. So because of Star Wars, Star Trek, it comes out in the late 60s. Then you get Star Wars going on. Then you have, like, Battlestar Galactica. You have all these other different fledgling type shows about space. Buck Rogers, the Buck Rogers show. You had all these other things going on for space.
Well, it's a whole different frontier. We have no idea what's going on out there, and it's a big hope for us. Yeah.
The final frontier.
Yes, very true story.
Anyway, so the last frontier is, of course, Alaska. We of course, coined by America.
Okay.
Anyway, but back to it. You had Star Trek that came out. You had Star Wars again, and I looked at another parallel in this whole thing. Is that because, like I said, they both start out kind of out here, and they work their way in, the opposable opposites, if you will, like a magnet.
Right.
So then the other part of it is that you really can't say versus like in sports. I'll give you an example in sports. You have these teams and everything else and all these sports out there now that say, well, this player could play in this era, or could anyone from the other era play in sports now? You can't really compare, because it's a different world, it's a different mindset, it's a different game, it's everything, so you can't compare.
Right.
Same thing as the wonderful commonality, but yet differences between Star Trek and Star Wars is Star Wars is more this outlaw, this rogue, this revolutionary belief in rising together to form this more perfect union and make all these things happen and go out and protect yourself and fight for the common good of all.
Right.
So that's what you have in Star Wars. Well, in Star Trek, they're looking at different things as in time travel and the process of time travel and going to different places and different things and what's next. We don't know what's going to happen. So
and how we'll react to different situations.
They're more of a controlled, logical society that looks at things kind of from afar in a different process. So I don't know how you can compare the two and make the two these opposable opposites. They're going to fight each other, but everybody
tries to, absolutely. But I'm not a big. I would never ever sit down and talk crap about a Trekkie or anything. No. That's not necessarily the way that works. But I do think that Wars is a better franchise just because of the storytelling. I haven't, but it's also because I haven't ever sat down and done any of the old '60s Star Wars Treks. So it's a very biased opinion. So, but overall, yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, it's two very different franchises. We shouldn't be in competition outside of just being able to draw up more sales and be able to get more ideas and better stories, because that's all that competition should really bring out, not the hatred.
Right, and so basically what usually happens, because fan stands for fanatic.
Okay.
So all these fans and then all these Comic-Con and all these other things, everybody creates this dynamic where it's like you versus them and all these other things. The franchises themselves, guess what?
Don't really.
Each one of them are worth in the billions. Of course, Star Wars is worth supremely probably 3 or 4 times more than Star Trek is.
Yeah, we do pretty well.
They do. I love it. Did you hear that? It's the we in there. We.
Oh, I'm a fan. Yeah,
no, I know
fandom.
You are. No, I know.
Of course,
you love you some Star Wars.
I absolutely contribute to that.
and he and I have spoken before and had conversations, and trust me, that always gets tied in somehow, somewhere. It always does. No,
if I can bring a little light to the Force, absolutely.
Oh, yeah. So basically, yeah, they're both worth in the billions. Star Wars is worth more when it comes to the process of the actual merchandising and everything else they've done. And
they have more exciting characters. I mean, you can't really... While Captain Kirk and Spock are interesting in their own rights, they're no Baby Yoda and Wookiee. I mean, come on.
Right.
They're bringing cuteness to the game, and it's hardly even fair. And if you're going to compare numbers like that,
right. And another dynamic is like I told you, there are kind of these different opposites of the same situation dealing with space. Well, the other part of it is Star Wars has always been character driven. It's always been doing deep dives and explaining every single character and getting you more in the driver's seat, if you will. With Han Solo and all these other things they did, even way back in the beginning of the franchise, they always seemed to do that. They always had a way to. You're invested in the situation.
You want
because
to be
right
one of
there.
those characters, absolutely.
Right.
They give you, if you feel like you're a swashbuckler, they give you Han Solo. If you feel like you're the titular good guy, you're Luke Skywalker. Yeah, absolutely. They give you every side of those coins. Leia even gives you a princess, so that way the girls could still be involved.
So in Disney, because now they have all the princesses, how come she's not a part of the princesses in Disney?
She is, absolutely. They did a princesses series with they did Leia, Rey, all the women of the franchise. It was a little cartoon that they did.
Know that.
Yeah, one of those small screen things that Disney's been trying to bring to the table. Was pretty popular. I want to say the pandemic drove a lot of the small screen sales. So the pandemic pushed out a good portion of small screen stories as far as Star Wars goes. Otherwise, we'd probably still be on a big screen. Even though the fandom does tear itself apart to the point to where we aren't getting a lot of new content, because every time we put something out, we tear it. Half of us tear it down. Absolutely. Just the Acolyte was just canceled because $236 million to spend on a series is a lot, and but the viewership did seem to show that the show should be renewed, but it wasn't necessarily profitable in this situation, and especially the way that the fandom continues to tear things down. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to keep pumping out content on a yearly basis or anything, because we're not spending the money on it, I guess.
Well, the other problem I have with today, because way back then you didn't have social media and everything else, but now you do. So you have social media. It's what's an algorithm?
Very good point.
What's an algorithm? What
so
gets
even
clicks?
In this Acolyte story, that's what they found, is that initially all of the negative press that the show was getting was bots. And the bots drove this storyline that the show was terrible all the way up until we finally got this twist mid-season that, hands down, everybody really enjoyed and drove further viewership. And yet the bots kind of just dictated and drug the entire franchise down from the start. And it's been a common theme throughout a lot of the recent releases, if I'm really thinking about it. Yeah.
Okay. So what I'm going to do right now is...
algorithms and AI, they are changing things.
So here's what it is. It's algorithms, right? And here's what AI is, and I'll be doing an episode on that soon, coming to an episode near you.
Looking forward to it.
Anti-individualism, AI. Not allowing us to be who we're going to be. But it's funny that, when you're going back to what you just said, so technology destroyed technology.
Correct.
So it's almost like iRobot, if you will, in like kind of a movie form, gone awry.
Yes, another franchise that was probably inspired Lucas quite a bit. Great callback there.
Look at that. Yeah. So now that we're going to take a moment here, because what we do is, unless you can eat a pizza in one bite, I always like to chop things up and then take little sections and run some bumper music. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run some bumper music right now, and we're going to go back. We're going to take a momentary lapse of reason, called a break. We're going to allow ourselves to take a moment, as you can too, even if you want to hit the pause button or whatever you want to do. So, all right, this is of course a momentary lapse of reason. What you're hearing right now is episode 55, Chatting and Chilling with Chris, part 1, Star Wars v. Star Trek. We'll be right back. All right. We're back. Of course, we're back. Thank you again. And here in a moment, we're going to get right back into episode 55 of this podcast, Chatting and Chilling with Chris, part 1, Star Trek v. Star Wars.
And we're back.
Yes, we were. Here's the thing. It's funny about all this. How can we be back if we never left?
Oh, fair enough. Well, no, we took our music break.
Oh, wait, that's right. We just did that.
Yeah.
And all the excitement and all this wonderful opportunity, I forgot. That's right. We're doing a podcast episode.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're right here.
But let's get back to this conversation.
Okay.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, there you go.
You're providing me with a lot of wisdom here.
It was quick, crammed wisdom. And, like I said, I enjoyed Star Trek. I enjoyed Star Wars. I still enjoy both of them. And it's amazing what they're doing, but that whole dynamic between both. Now, what if Star Trek never had Star Wars? What if the Beatles?
It sounds like they wouldn't have had the competition and driven each other into movies in the small screen.
What if the Beatles never had the Rolling Stones? What if Mike Tyson had fill in the blank of whoever's next? Anyway, just saying that if you don't have that competition, it doesn't help you rise to the level, the cream of the crop, to be the very best that you can be.
Interesting. Yeah, love that thought process. Great. I got into the franchise because
let's go.
It was kind of a little bit of.
Let's do this, Chris. Let's go back. Here's what we'll do. We'll kind of go back in the Wayback Machine, and it may not be that far back for some because we may have been born in
it's a time machine for sure.
I'm not here to crush and denigrate the young people because you know what? You're here listening and you're a part of this process too. But we're going to go back in the Wayback Machine. For me, it's way. They're still going.
A long time ago, a galaxy far away. Absolutely.
Exactly. Look at you. So yeah, kind of go back in your
no, I
process
really
of you.
I got into Star Wars with the movies at a young age, and then didn't really get into the books and become a huge fan until after college. Oddly enough, I was dating a gal that worked nights, and she lost her mind on me one day for clicking my computer playing Star Wars Galaxies when that was a big huge thing for us, and I was forced to go purchase a book to stay quiet during the day, and I now own every single book that has ever been published by Star Wars.
But that's awesome, Chris.
Yeah, no, it drove. It gave me a nice little thing and a new little hobby, and I've really enjoyed it over the years.
And in a relationship, real quick, not to cut them off, look, you do you be you, and you're going to exactly be who you want to be. If other people don't want to be around you in the process of what you like to do, they weren't meant to be anyway.
That's a very good assessment, yes. Not a thought process that I had at the time, but it did get me into the franchise, which I really do appreciate. Never been much into the toys a whole lot, but people do purchase me toys for Christmas, and I proudly display them. I do have a Star Wars room that I'm quite proud of, every one of the books, and lots of posters, movie film, actual footage from the original films.
Really?
Yeah.
Actual footage?
Yes. Spliced out from the original film canisters.
So mind you, again, I have a face for an audio podcast, of course, and we can all laugh about that. We can't see your room, but with words, let's paint a little picture, if you will, of your room.
Sure. So you walk in. There's I'm a big Dark Side fan, so I've got cutout of Kylo Ren. I've got a cutout of Vader. Both of them are standing on either side of a Emperor sitting the throne of a cutout as well. On the walls, you would have posters of each of those guys. Each one of the little film credits that I bought are in I wouldn't call them sequential order, but are prominently displayed along the walls. I've got multiple lightsabers for if I ever do decide to date again, I will be able to settle any arguments rather quickly. And TV, so I can do that, and a chair, and just so I can sit and read and enjoy my Star Wars environment that I built.
So are you OCD to the point where you start from the very back of the beginning of the franchise and kind of organize everything accordingly?
Now,
in kind of a
yes,
timeline?
but not initially. No, my first book that I ever purchased had Ben Skywalker on the cover. I can't remember what the title of it was, but it was definitely later in the book series, because it was, I want to say 2006, 2008, something like that. So that was the Fate of the Jedi book series, if I recall correctly. So at that point, in each sentence, essentially, during the book, in those book series, it was making a callback to some other book. So I was like, well, I don't understand what's happening here, so I would have to go buy this book. And then I would not understand what's happening with this storyline, so I'd have to buy this book. So eventually, at some point, I was like, I'm just going to start at the beginning, and purchased Star Wars and started there and went all the way through Leia had kids, Luke had kids, we had Mara Jade, we had a whole war fought. The Yuzong Vaughn came from the deep space and fought all the way to Coruscant. We lost the capital. It was Chewie. They killed Chewie. They dropped a moon on Chewie to kill him during that storyline.
Going Sopranos on Star Wars. Interesting.
Yeah. The Yuzong Vong. They were masochistic. They'll never be brought into the franchise by Disney because of this. They were void of the Force. So the Jedi couldn't feel them. They couldn't sense when they were going to attack, just the same as the droids initially in the what do you want to call them? Initial films, the prequel saga. There we go.
Now you're
that's
still...
why the Jedi would struggle against the droids. That's why they were great opponents for them. They were void of life, so they couldn't sense a shot coming at them. They couldn't sense any of those any of the droids' intentions, where they could sense them from you.
Yeah. Well, the ironic part is that I'm going along for the ride with you in this episode too, with Chris, and this is an amazing trip. But guess what? I keep hearing we. I'm telling you, he is deep dive delved into.
Love it.
I know. I can definitely tell, and that's why I'm saying this is awesome to hear this from you. Real quick, what I'm going to do is I forgot to give the podcast disclaimer. This is actually so that way, it's basically that way I CYA my own self when it comes to the podcast. So the views and opinions expressed in this and all Arena of Ideas podcast episodes are that of the host and guest, not to be taken out of context and misrepresented by any means possible. Continue.
Where would you like to go? Shucks, I left off with the droids being voids of the Force, which the Vong were as well. They were unique. Their technology was biological based, so they weren't where we were using hyperdrive thrusters. They had a seashell that would project them through space, things like that. Right. It was unique. It forced the Jedi, which were just barely coming back from having been extinct to begin with, to really examine the ways that they were using the Force.
Really?
And actually become warriors during a time when they really shouldn't have been. They should have been withdrawn, and it led to even future problems where the Imperials that existed at the time kind of got upset about the way that the Jedi were being involved in politics, which drove another Galactic Alliance to go against them during Fate of the Jedi series, which Natasha Dali led Mandalorian siege against the Jedi Temple on Coruscant. It was quite an ordeal.
So I have a good compare and contrast for you, Chris.
What's up?
You love the whole series and everything else, and
gotcha.
we'll dive more back into Star Trek a little bit. We'll do that, but the main focus is it's a conversation, and this is his life, his love, and his liberty, which is Star Wars. So here's what we're going to do. First of all, give me some of the things maybe you don't like so much maybe about Star Wars. Here's what we're going to do. Maybe not dislike, but maybe not like as much.
Well, no, I mean, I think I've already made it a point. It's the fandom. I don't care.
Okay.
If we were all significantly more positive and just enjoyed the stories that were being put out and not sad about the stories that were being told because the older stories were things that we were used to, then things would be significantly more positive. I mean, we'd get more content. We would have this new Rey movie, which they're talking about canceling. We would have Taika Waititi's takes on Star Wars. We would have the Dawn of the Jedi series or movie that was supposed to have been out. All of those things would be out right now if Disney was willing to invest money, if our fandom wasn't just tearing things down. And that's the thing that I don't care for. Once Disney bought the franchise, a lot of people were really sad that they tore down the old canon. And while the old canon stories were great, I'm recounting them to you right now. It's not our stories to tell. Right. Once Disney bought the franchise, if they couldn't have Chewbacca dead for The Force Awakens or any of the stories that they wanted to tell. Even if Disney did do that, it's just a retelling of books that have already been written. Why would they do that? It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So let's enjoy the content that they're giving us. It's great stories. Each one of these series, each one of these movies has a great twist that all of us have really enjoyed. Even with the sequel trilogy that they put out, how many of us were all talking about, well, who's Rey for a decade? And it's the same exact thing that they gave us between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. So how everybody's tearing it down and being sad that because Rey's a Palpatine, that wasn't our decision to make. Just enjoy the fact that she became a Skywalker at the end of the movie.
Look at the objectivity, look at the positivity, the charisma of Citizen Chris.
I'm trying.
I'm telling you.
I love the storyline. I'd love to see more things put out.
Yeah.
The Acolyte cancellation was actually very disappointing. That reports beforehand were that Disney thought that they were going to be able to move away from The Mandalorian because they thought the Acolyte was going to be so successful. And they killed Jedi in the Acolyte. Prominent characters. It was Game of Thrones all over again mid-season. It was awesome. People really enjoyed it. So it could have been a great franchise or another great storyline that we're not going to get told now because the bots and fandom can't really get over the fact that it's not our stories to tell.
Oh, and a little tie-in that he may have given you as content right there, throwing in Game of Thrones. again, this is going to be a multi-part series of different episodes.
Oh, so you the red? Yeah, no, we had a red wedding in Star Wars this year. Absolutely.
Yeah. So what's happening is that this is part 1 to your series of whatever you want it to be. So you threw in Game of Thrones.
Oh, no, you can get down on games.
So
that's a popular pop culture reference.
So what I'm saying is that this is part 1, Star Wars versus Star Trek.
We could do that.
It's however you want this to be, however you want to chop it up, whatever you want it to be, Chris. Guess what? This is your opportunity. But what I'm going to say is this: give me, from movies, what is your maybe not so favorite versus your most favorite, and then we'll go down to the series and we'll get into an idea of again, there's no worst of it, but there may be something that you don't look too much in the series versus the most you love. So
start with
the movies.
Okay. If I was to start off with, I'm a big fan of technology, so if I don't appreciate watching the older flicks because it's not as, what do you want to say? What would Erickson would call it? What would Erickson call it? All the special effects.
Okay.
I appreciate special effects, modern special effects.
Yeah.
So I don't care for watching the older flicks. I don't care for that aspect of it. It's a great story. It has to be told. But I don't care for the non-special effects in those films.
We have a friend of ours, a commonality friend known as Travis, and he would basically say that that's nothing but, smoke and mirrors and all this. Okay, so here's what he would do. Like if this is going to be a restaurant metaphor, we'll get right back to this, but a restaurant metaphor, he would probably order something cold on the menu, and Chris would order fajitas so he could hear and smell the sizzle coming through those doors.
Absolutely.
He wants that.
I do. Absolutely. So but I also love those. I love those movies because it gave us the stories that I really enjoy. So I'm a prequels era kid, which is defined by the fandom. I really enjoyed the early flicks. Anakin's story, how he fell to the dark side. I remember crying watching Obi-Wan and Anakin fight in Rise of the Sith.
Okay.
It was a beautiful moment for me.
I'm not the guy who
remember crying when Darth Maul lit his double lightsaber because I was like, "Holy, you guys are gonna die! Look at this beautiful weapon. You guys are both dead now."
It's kind of like in Ricky Bobby when the cougar's in the car and that beautiful killing machine will eat you with a smile on its face. I believe that might be a good reference to what you're talking about.
Absolutely,
Darth Maul.
Yeah, it was just a beautiful.
He was like
movie.
the Mike Tyson, if you will, of
that film, Phantom Menace. So
exactly.
He went out like Boba Fett, but he was a great aspect to that film. Vader has carried the franchise this entire time. How could I not be a huge fan of him? He is the dark side personified. He scared children. When I was a young kid, I could barely even tolerate looking at the screen when he was on there. He scared me.
That's everybody. That's even me. I'm a novice when it comes to all this, but I still love it. I've watched all the shows. I've gotten to the characters. But no, every time you come on stage, you're like, give me some rotten vegetables to throw at the screen or something.
Yeah, no, he is a scary individual, and they definitely doubled down on that towards the end of Rogue One, where they showed just how scary he could be and tearing apart an entire ship on his way to trying to get his plans back from Princess Leia.
So let's go back to Darth Vader real quick, and this is some funny, interesting, insightful things.
What you got?
Okay, so James Earl Jones, rest in peace.
Rest in peace.
Rest in peace. The man, he just has a voice that kind of like in Ted, he has a voice you want to have a pillow on.
Oddly enough, he gave permission for Star Wars to use his voice in perpetuity.
Did he really?
Yeah. He is going to be Darth Vader forever. Isn't that beautiful?
That's amazing.
Yeah, love that.
So here's what I find is a conflicting contrast, if you will, so to speak. Darth Vader, this evil, evil, sadistic person, bad intentions and all this sort of stuff, and he has the freaking voice of James Earl Jones, one of the most calm, peaceful, let's get along, Mufasa. I mean, we're talking the history of him and his voice, of what he's done and the things he's accomplished. And he's the voice of Darth Vader. I find that an interesting, compelling thought.
It could also be a very scary voice, couldn't it? Yeah, it was the range that James Earl Jones has was beautiful. Yeah, he's definitely going to be missed. A beautiful, great actor.
Right. So back to what you were saying, I'm just saying I find it compelling that the guy with the most calming of voices, with calming of personalities and all these things he can do.
Isn't
and
it
just
some of the calmest people in your life that you're like, shucks, I probably shouldn't mess with that person.
Right. Kind of like Hannibal Lecter, maybe for some Silence of the Lambs or something. Speaking in a quiet tone with orchestrated music over the top. You know what? Yeah, we're going to go with that answer. Yes, right. You're right.
Yeah,
you're right.
No, I'm scared.
Yeah.
You do that, I don't mess with you. No, sir.
Yeah, no, you're right. You speak in calm intent. In fact, you just cake out a village of people and your pulse doesn't change or doesn't rise whatsoever. And you just go through like it's no big deal. You call it Saturday. I'm good. I'm going to step out. Yeah.
Nope. You win.
Anyway, I just thought that was compelling that they chose his voice of all.
It's I wasn't involved, but I thought it was a great choice. Yeah, it's scared the heck out of me as a kid. Scared the heck out of a lot of people as it drove a story for 6 movie sagas, a 9-movie saga. So.
Right.
Yeah, no, he was a heck of a character.
Yeah, I didn't want to step in the way of what you were talking about.
You're great. I just find
it compelling.
But we're okay. No, Vader's great.
And plus the fact that James Earl Jones has passed away again.
Yeah, definitely got to mention that.
Thoughts and prayers to him, just completely. But back to what you were saying.
I couldn't even. I have no idea what I was saying, to be honest with you.
We were doing giving a ranking of maybe what you don't find for movies. It's your top and your least, and then for the small screen, top and least. Again, we just want to kind of get a broad spectrum, if you will, from bookends, if you will, in the process that is Chris and the Star Wars universe.
And obviously, I guess if we're getting back into the prequel movies, I did struggle with Jar Jar, though it was some comedic relief during a story, and it seems and has been a common theme throughout Star Wars, so I wasn't too sad about it. I loved the movie that made fun of that, where the guy had gotten a preview of a Gungan and gotten a tattoo on his back. I can't recall what the movie's name is, but hilarious movie scene.
Yeah.
He's like, this guy's going to be awesome, and turns out, no, not even a little.
I know what you're talking about. I can't think of the movie either, and I can't go look it up or anything, but you're right. The way I look at it is like this. If you think of like the cantina scenes,
and they always had some
people, they always had funny comic relief in those
unique aliens
movies.
To try and expand your imagination on what all could be out there. It's the goal of most of the sci-fi franchises is to expand your mind and imagine different species and beings that are available. So and a Gungan definitely did that. Loved the way he walked and talked, and that definitely gave us all something to make fun of for quite a while. The idea that he was the one who brought about the downfall of the Republic. Who saw that coming? Come on, that was a great little storyline that he had.
That's a very poignant diversionary tactic. Nothing to see here. Okay, we're going to get you over here. Nothing to see over here. And I'm going from one hand to the other because, again, this is an audio podcast, so it's that kind of sleight of hand, if you will.
Absolutely. A hero from a couple of wars that recommends that we should raise this emperor above all, and everybody falls in line. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he had a point in his story, or overall throughout the films, but the initial execution was a little poor, in my opinion. And when we jump into the latest movies, I was sad that it wasn't that we didn't get Mara Jade, that we didn't get Ben Skywalker back, but I really enjoyed the fact that we still did get Solo children. We still did get an overall baddie that we all still have questions about to this day. So, I mean, and people that scare you. We still got glimpses of the effects of what Vader done over all those years. It was still a great sequel trilogy that didn't tell the story that George Lucas had initially intended, but that wasn't our story to tell once again.
I love it. Well, so basically, and this is way back in the 70s. And this is kind of throwing everything back. It's like going in the Wayback Machine. But anyway, right when he first started out, he actually went on 60 Minutes, and he had a conversation with one of the reporters on 60 Minutes. And this is back when he was just starting to put out the first couple of the movies. And he actually did this reveal that, like, I don't think many people, I think a lot of people glossed over it and didn't really do any listening to what he was saying. He talked about 9 movies that he's going to be coming out with. He talked about the 9 actually in this 60 Minutes interview.
I remember, I'm not familiar with that interview, but initially, yes, he did have a 9 movie story arc. There was plans for that. So if I recall correctly, it was going to be somewhat similar to what was told, but Luke would have had a child. His name would have been something along the lines of Ben Skywalker, because Luke did always hold up Obi-Wan. Yeah,
adored him.
Absolutely. Yes. So, I didn't think we were going to go into this one. There was scripts written for it. He put a lot of thought into it. I really can't recall why he overall did not want to. I'm sure it had to have been the stresses and just the... I really cannot tell you why he personally did not want to do those 3. But there was a 9-movie story arc planned for it. He did have a unique story planned. Darth Vader wasn't necessarily going to come back, or Emperor definitely wasn't going to, but they were going to deal with the ramifications. Right? Emperor They were going to deal with the ramifications of everything, but the Jedi Order would have already been rebuilt essentially by the 7th movie, so it wouldn't have been torn down. Luke wouldn't have been a deadbeat dad, which he turned out to not even be a dad, because that was just all of our hopeful thinking again.
This is almost like waxing poetic. Star Wars being Springer, like Jerry Springer, almost like the Jerry Springer show.
It's definitely a family saga.
It's an interesting,
it's been a tough
saga.
It's trying to get away from the family saga has definitely been a challenge for Star Wars, and
trying to break apart.
Absolutely,
try to be their own person.
Mm-hmm. No, a lot of people really enjoy the Skywalker name. They enjoy the Skywalker saga, but it's time for us to get some new stories. Let's break off of there. I want to see more Mandalorian. There's a new skeleton crew coming out. Jude Law's character is under wraps. We're not quite sure what kind of Jedi he's going to be. How did you survive Order 66? Lots of cool stories. Order 66 still reigns throughout our entire franchise. There's multiple stories we could tell off of that.
Real quick, Chris.
What's up?
Just like me, I'm going for the ride with you on this wonderful trip. You were piloting this bus.
I gotta explain what Order 66 is.
Okay, so here's what we need to do. I don't know what Order 66 is.
Yeah, so
and
Order
a lot
66.
of people listening lot of people
let's
are going,
do that.
Well, you know what? Chris, tell us about Order 66.
I can do that.
Thank you, sir.
Palpatine's ultimate stroke against the Jedi was Order 66. The moment when Rise of the Sith, or Revenge of the Sith, when the clones turn on the Jedi, that was that was Order 66. That was Palpatine's plans from well before he began the Clone Wars coming to fruition.
I did not know that. This is so insightful.
So they killed thousands, almost nearly all of the Jedi. They marched on the Jedi Temple. They killed Padawans. Anakin himself did. It devastated the Jedi ranks. There were very few left afterwards. Yoda, Obi-Wan, a handful of others that they're still trying to define for us now, and telling those storylines of what happened to them and how they escaped is essentially what the franchise is right now.
But for Marvel, if you look at this way, that's almost like Thanos and snapping his fingers and almost taking out everything. I mean,
somewhat,
kind of. Well, again,
because we didn't get to bring any of ours back, unfortunately.
Right.
Yeah, but it was a huge moment. But it was also, when a villain wins, it usually does dictate for generations. We're going to feel the events or the feelings of the Order 66 for generations. We're going to feel the events of the Snap for generations, and that's going to be a great story for Marvel to tell as well.
I just think it's. By the way, we can make Marvel. We can make Game of Thrones.
We just got I just started the Agatha.
Right. So here's of course we're chopping this up.
Yeah.
This is part 1, and we're going to make this into as many as you want to. Do whatever you want to.
Every single weekend with you, Mike. You're one of my favorite people, dude.
You're one of mine too, man. Anyway, so no, but what we're going to do is, like I said, I thought this was compelling that we're going to go Star Trek and Star Wars. We're going to get more into Star Trek again. It's been a tale that's been told for a long period of time. And the other problem with Star Trek, and we'll get back more into Star Wars, is the problem is that they're kind of elitist in the fact in Star Trek is that, yes, you know those characters' names, but you really don't know, like how they do with Star Wars, where they really do a deep dives into the characters themselves. And I mean, they do, but they really, I mean, the people that are hardcore Trekkies, yeah, they're going to be able to tell you every story about every single person.
Right.
But on the surface, just simply watching it, you don't really feel like you're in the exclusive club and you're kind of tied in, like, so to speak, with Star Wars.
With a little bit of knowledge, I don't know.
Look, I'm not trying to denigrate and down anybody doing the Star Trek thing. I'm just saying you can just see where it plays those two different dynamics. Again, one's going through time and itself and doing different explorations and everything else, and they're figuring out, but it's in a different hierarchy of society and the way in which they conduct things. More outlaw. So like if you were going to sit there and relate this to driving, kind of like Chris is driving this bus, is that Star Trek, they would go on the highway and find the quickest, easiest, best route to do it in a calm and normal, boring way. But if you're talking Star Wars, they're going to sit there and say, oh, but I can take this little road less traveled off on the side of the road. I can go off-road and still get to the same place. That's where they're going. Again, metaphorically, giving it a reference to the two. We're going to get right back into this, but anyway, I'm just saying that's kind of how I see it. Again, I'm into this. I love the shows. I've really been into both of the different series and the franchises, but I don't know it as deep as you do. But
I don't know I don't know Trek as well, but I would probably disagree. I think even with a little bit of Trek that I have watched, I do understand that Spock is a huge character. He's done a lot throughout that franchise. I could tell you that he has a mom. I could tell you that he has a dad. I could tell you he has a... I don't know if she's non-binary or a sister. But he has a sister.
You're right.
And she's done all of those come off... We could almost call it the Spock saga, or even the Captain Kirk saga, because his reign over the Enterprise dictated quite a bit of what happened afterwards, and or Picard even. Shucks, Picard's him being a captain's going to have ramifications. He's
made it very dynamic too.
Absolutely.
No, he has. And again, I'm not knocking.
But you're right. No, I couldn't tell you as much about you. I could tell you quite a bit about Spock, but not as much about those captains, and that is unique. Right. Whereas, yeah, we do know where Luke comes from. We know where Leia comes from. We've seen a movie about where Solo comes from. You're right. I agree.
I'm just saying
interesting,
that...
huh? You've changed my mind even in the little span of 5 minutes. Way to be.
Well, thank you, Mr. Man. No, like I said, doing all this research and everything else, yes, they do have some very compelling situations and things. And in fact, Christopher Pike was actually the original person on Star Trek before Kirk. What happened is he was originally, it was called the Menagerie, and that's how they started Star Trek.
Interesting.
Was the Menagerie, and Christopher Pike was the actual first captain, but then they kind of integrated, they do this time thing where they'll go forward and they'll go backward in time and everything.
Right.
Star Trek does. Star Trek plays it. That's why when I go through and I read the timelines, there is no real timeline or continuum to Star Trek. They just kind of travel through space and through everything else and do what they do. We're coming upon this.
You don't think there's any eras or anything along those lines?
There is eras, but I don't think there is distinctly...
different timelines.
Yeah, they're not chopped up and broken down quite as well, because again, it's just... they got timelines as in actual time periods, and I'll get into that here in a minute.
I get you. I get what you're saying.
Yeah. But anyway, so he actually started the whole he actually started in the very, very beginning of Star Trek. That's what it was Christopher Pike. It's called the Menagerie, the Cage or something. Anyway, so then Kirk kind of jumped in and kind of made it happen, and realizing, and way back then, they would do test audiences to test. And so instead of having focus groups and stuff now, and beta tests and algorithms and all the wonderful things that we all know and love, or not. I'm going to leave that one there. Anyway, so that's what they did. And they found out that people were compelled with Kirk. Because William Shatner, an amazing actor, he is very compelling. And he is in the whole process of what he does and everything else. And he is the guy that's kind of wants to go rogue, and they all have to rein him in. But anyway, that's kind of what happened. So yeah, you do have personalities, and you have all these different things that go on, these experiences and things. I just think that storytelling-wise, Gene Roddenberry is great in the process, and he's He's written many famous and amazing stories and things, and even going with Star Trek, it's amazing. But storytelling, getting us all involved, being a part of the process, having us walk in the shoes and everything else, I believe Lucas, we're going to have to give the nod if we were going to put him on a scale. We're going to have to tilt the nod a little bit too.
Star Wars, absolutely. I would have to, yeah.
So, and anyway, and how I look at it is I actually have the entire Stephen King library. I have Stephen King's entire collection of everything he's ever done.
You're a King fan.
King fan.
I could dig that.
So there's other people that have written books and written horror books and done horror stories and movies. But Stephen King, he delves you into so much detail and so much process when it comes to every single character, everything else. He actually, even to the leaves crunching, everything else that's going on, it's full implicit detail. I kind of relate Stephen King in the way in which his process of working and getting in your mind and basically working on the high levels of the psyche, if you will, and getting into your head and having you be there. That's kind of the way I feel that George Lucas has kind of taken us along on this journey and trip.
Way deeper than I'd ever put any thought into, bud.
So anyway, so you given us Order 66, and thank you for explaining that. Cause
no, you're okay. No,
here's the thing. I watched the movies. In fact, even to the prequels, what I think is cool is we go into they go into the Senate, and they go into the actual places where they're actually instead of
the whole republic has to fall. So in order for a republic to fall, we have to know the players in that republic, don't we?
Right, we do.
Yeah, we have to watch it happen. So
yeah, we do. But I always, I've always watched the movies and everything else, but it's then taking you into actually the movies actually being in the Senate.
Yeah, you feel like you're a decision. You're finding out. You're the senator. You're trying to figure out. You could be on either side. Do you care for order or do you care for freedom?
I love it.
Yeah, I
love it. But that's the cool part is with expanding everything else out and going to the 9-movie format and then going to the small screen. It's neat how then, because here's the thing. Everybody wants to know how the sausage is made. Or maybe they don't. Yeah. They're going to eat the food, but some people want to know. So what I think is cool is when I saw the scenes where they're in the Republic and they're sitting there and they're actually conducting business and everything else they're doing, it almost reminded me of the days of Rome when you're talking about Julius Caesar and the Senate and everything else, the way in which they would conduct things. That's how I kind of looked at it.
Oh, we have the same kind of format in our government. Absolutely, right. Yeah.
But that's how I saw when they went back to the prequels and they were actually in there doing that. That's what I thought of because, of course, the Arena of Ideas podcast, the picture is the Roman Colosseum.
Correct.
So again, that's kind of where I was tying that in. But anyway, that's how I kind of see it.
Okay.
It was neat seeing. It was actually instead of them talking about this and this is what's going to happen, everything else early. Now it's getting in and delving into the actual process of and us actually seeing it.
Yeah. Well, cool. You had
to.
While it was boring, a full Attack of the Clones did give you the Senate and show you exactly what was happening behind the scenes as far as how a Senate can turn and how an emperor can be elected from a grand republic that had existed for 1,000 years.
Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to keep going, but I'm going to chop this up with another break, giving us an opportunity to, shall we say, clear your minds, clear everything else, clear your calendar, be a part of this, because you know what? This is definitely appointment listening in a podcast gold, Citizen Chris. And so what we're going to do is we're going to sit there and take another chop-up break, give you a chance to step away, and then come right back in and get right back into this episode.
Let's do it.
Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to chop this up with another break. I'm going to throw some more music on here. Again, this is episode 55 of the Arena of Ideas podcast. Chatting and chilling with Chris, part 1, Star Wars v. Star Trek. We'll be right back.
Forever lost in some kind of
All right. We're back. Again, welcome back to the Arena of Ideas podcast. This is episode 55. Chatting and chilling with Chris, part 1, Star Wars v. Star Trek. I want to thank you all for being here. I appreciate every one of you. What's happening is if this is your first time listening, I want to thank you for being here and enjoying the process of what we do here. And again, it's your podcast. I'm the host. And again, this is a conversation. But anyway, if you've come back and you're listening again, thank you again for being here. I appreciate all of it. There is 29 places to listen to the podcast. So it's however and wherever you listen to a podcast. You can follow, you can like, you can also hit notifications and get involved in the process of listening to this. And again, if you're out there listening, tell everyone else about this and get them involved too. I want everyone to get a chance and an opportunity to listen to exactly if it's a conversation or it's a discussion about a certain thing that matters or whatever else. You can reach me out at Michael Kingston 723 at Yahoo. You can also go in and use a phone number. It's in the informational. Anyway, we're getting right back now to our conversation with Chris, Citizen Chris. He's from Pueblo, Colorado. He knows who he is. And we're right back here.
Yes, come back. Listen to his show. He's awesome. Listen to it everywhere. Listen to it on Spotify, YouTube, wherever you can get your podcasts. Listen to Mike Kingston.
iHeartRadio. Now, of course, this started out Sprecher, speaker with an R. They're the ones that gave me the opportunity saying, have you got something to say? Well, guess what? This is the 55th opportunity known as Something to Say, called an episode. And again, however and wherever you can listen, this is exactly how you can do this. And I don't have enough time in my life or anyone else's time to listen to explain it all. Just however and wherever you get it. And if you see other people, tell them about the same thing. Tell them to get into the opportunity of being a part of something great, which is your podcast. And again, I'm the host of that. Chris, welcome back.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
I'm glad that you're here. I opine so much for other people to actually get on here. This is now the fourth time I've had a conversation as being a podcast episode, and I love it. It just, he told me he was going to be on, and there's other people that will say they're going to come on, but you know what? It's trying to get someone.
I want to have conversations with Mike Kingston. Mike Kingston has unique views, and I love them.
Well, that's good. My psychologist told me the same thing on a couch trip, and the voices in my head seem to be squelched every time I do an episode.
Good.
Just kidding. Anyway. But anyway, so this is awesome. So what do you think? This is the first time you've ever been on this medium as a podcaster.
It's pretty fun. Yeah, I really enjoy it. Yeah, it's fun. I've been having a great time here.
All right, that's the siren. That's not the siren to come take me away or pick me up. No, thank God. That's just something driving by.
Somebody's injured.
What's happening is, Chris, if in doing all these parts and everything else, you decided you ever wanted to get into doing your own podcast or something else?
No, I would never want to do anything like that. No, I wouldn't mind sitting down and having as many conversations with you as you want. No,
I'm just saying if you ever chose to.
Take this medium.
You have very enterprising personality. You have a great voice. Everything else, you already knew these things. He just can't say them because that's self-glossing, and that's a different topic of discussion for a different episode. Anyway, so again, not to lose sight of the fact that we're in the final frontier and we're going into Star Trek v. Star Wars. Again, I called it that. It's not really that. We're coming up with the reasons why it's not that. But everybody who's a fan, if you're a Trekkie fan, Trek's the greatest, Star Trek's the greatest thing in the world. If you're a Star Wars fan, Star Wars is the greatest thing in the world. And everybody has their favorites of what they like. But anyway.
One's scientifically driven. The other one's more of your imagination. Absolutely. Star Trek I've always looked at as a actual future. Those things could possibly happen.
Yep.
Star Wars is a little more far-fetched. It's definitely concocted in someone's mind in a galaxy far, far away.
And I'm going to go in.
It would be pretty cool if it was some alternate reality that we could all be a part of.
So, if one of the ships from Star Wars landed.
Oh, I'd definitely go.
You would go.
Oh, yeah.
You would even.
Oh, yeah.
No reservations.
Even if I'm just scrubbing a deck on a spaceship, I'm out. Absolutely. I would love to be a part of those of the saga that is playing out.
I love that.
Even that swashbuckler that's scrubbing those decks has a storyline.
You're right. They do.
Yeah.
Every single bleeping one of them does.
I can tell you right now, in the original films, when everybody that you ever saw in that film, from Boba Fett to just even a little side character that was sitting in that cantina, they all had a story and a reason for being in that cantina at that moment. It was the Force bringing them there.
And that's also where I was giving you that reference to Stephen King. And it's those little intricate, finite details, that every little single thing, down the nuts and bolts and everything else.
A good portion of that wasn't defined until later. So the comparison doesn't stand. No, Stephen King definitely put those thoughts into his pages. And ours was defined well after that. The books didn't really start. Shucks, Lucas didn't want anybody doing anything until almost Return of the Jedi time. I feel like there wasn't. I don't know that he even did a book for the initial Star Wars until after Empire Strikes Back. It wasn't his thing. His thing was merchandising, and he made buku bucks off of making sure that he had the merchandising rights to his films.
Yeah, you always saw commercials on his stuff all the time.
I didn't, but
I know.
It's definitely
You're
something
younger.
I'd read
You're
about.
younger, so.
Something I read about, and it was a brilliant aspect to it because he has his ranch and multiple movies to show for it.
Right. And basically, if you talk about the merchandising part we discussed earlier, I believe it's like $70 billion. I believe the Star Wars franchise is worth somewhere in the neighborhood of $70 billion at this time, something like that. And then if you go down to Star Trek, again, they're both in the billions, but it's around the 11 billion mark for Star Trek. It's still huge. It's still huge. But like I said, I mean, again, I don't tie everything to money and I don't tie everything to the bottom line, but that's a huge compare and contrast when you talk about both franchises.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I really didn't ever.
Again, I had to do
No, you got to throw those numbers in there. I love that. No,
Yeah.
I did not know that. I'd always just equated it because it was better storylines. But yeah, no, if money does absolutely dictate quite a bit, and Star Wars does dominate in that aspect.
Right. And so the other part of it is the fact that when Lucas had it, I think of Disney, Disney taking over, I think it got to the heights of where it's at right now. It may not be as much. Again, it might be a closer variance between Star Trek and Star Wars, but with Disney taking over and everything else and what they've been really doing as a driver for that franchise, I see a lot of it. Like I said, you can see a lot of that, especially in the small screen now with streaming. Again, way back when in 67 or 68, whenever Star Trek started, they didn't have streaming. You had 3 channels if you're lucky. And your kid holding the rabbit ear antennas, hoping to God the picture will stay clear at least through the series of the show. I know you don't know nothing about it. I know, before your day. And then at a certain time, the man on the moon would go across the moon, and then the TV would just shut off. Now it's 24/7, 365.
We want as much content of our favorites as possible. Absolutely.
Yes. Anyway, like I said, I'm not all about numbers, but doing the research, I did find out a lot about the intricacies, and I wanted to find out what were the bottom lines of the two. And again, I'm not using that as the indicator to drive both franchises. I'm just saying
it's a huge
that's
indicator.
Plainly what they earned.
Yeah.
Yes.
I have no thoughts on that subject.
Okay, so what we did was, before revisiting back, you kind of went through kind of the favorite movie and the not as favorite. You kind of went through those two spectrums.
Sure.
So now what about on the streaming side of it, the small screen side of it, streaming? On that part,
there hasn't been anything that I really haven't enjoyed. Mandalorian was one of the first things that they put out. That was a great story. Even the great thing about the franchise is they're always throwing in a surprise that nobody sees coming. And even in the first episode of The Mandalorian, none of us knew Baby Grogu was coming. It was a great little thing. He was crazy cute. It got all of us into it. So, a great story right there. The Mandalorian comes from nothing and almost raises up to become Mandalore and brings this Jedi / Mandalorian along with him. What's Grogu going to be throughout this entire story? I mean, how's he going to participate and how is he going to become the Mandalorian at some point in time? Like, it's a great story that they brought to the table here. So, Mandalorian was great. After that, I don't know. Oh, Ahsoka that was awesome. I wasn't necessarily into the cartoons a whole lot as far as Rebels goes, but I had enough that I could follow along with it. So when Ahsoka came out, that was a great story. It gave us live action Ahsoka, which Lucas was in on her creation, and so was Filoni. She's Filoni's baby, actually, and Dave Filoni being the one, not necessarily the czar, but the go-to guy for Star Wars and their characters now. So getting to see Ahsoka in live action, seeing where that story goes, that was awesome. Seeing Ezra on the live screen, all of those characters, just the nice thing about the franchise is that we're getting things. It's significantly cheaper to make it on as cartoons, and while cartoons are more driven towards children, it gets our children involved, but they still make adult references, so our adults can still be involved. And Star Wars has done great with that. So whenever they did 3 series, the Clone Wars, Rebels, the Resistance, each of those were all cartoons. Now that the streaming services are making it a little bit more available for us to see these stories, we're getting to see them in live action, and that's a great aspect to these stories. So Ahsoka was all right. I really enjoyed that one. Skeleton Crew is going to be dropping here soon. I'm looking forward to that. We got just recently, once again, the Acolyte, which I really enjoyed, but doesn't sound like we're going to get any future seasons of. So the small screen has brought us quite a bit of new stories between cartoons and the live action that give us just more of an immersive view into our universe. It's hours and hours of content that can keep you into a galaxy far, far away, so you can sneak away from this one for a little bit.
It might be far, far away, but the streaming keeps us that much closer.
It does.
So what I have here is I have the Star Wars and I have Star Trek timelines.
Okay.
And this goes into, I'm going to do a run through on this.
All right.
And again, it's going to make more to you than to me, because again, I'm a novice.
Okay. Look, I'll do the Star Wars timeline. All right.
Okay.
So you start off with the Dawn of the Jedi, which is we haven't really gotten into that a whole lot just yet, but obviously somebody had to discover the Force and define how Jedi are going to be throughout the time.
Yeah.
Or throughout the next couple of generations. Then you pop into the Old Republic. You had the Jedi Order's enemies. As schism of a Jedi gives way to the Sith. So, yes, in between the Dawn of the Jedi and the Old Republic, the Jedi had to have their enemy arise, which was the Sith. They fell to the dark side, had a totally different view of how the Force should be used. They're more driven by their own. I don't know that's kind of the neat thing about the franchise now, is that there's so many different shades to being a darksider. There's so many different shades to being a lightsider. It doesn't necessarily have to be greed that drives a Sith or power that drives a Sith. It could be anything. Yeah. But there still had to be an enemy for the Jedi. The following the light, the way that they have been, isn't necessarily all that great. So they did have to have an enemy, which gave way to the Sith. Then
real quick for you. Actually, if you're out there and you're listening and you want to make more semblance of what's going on, when I looked this up, I simply Googled the timeline of Star Wars. It brought this out, and it actually, you know what?
We have our own Wikipedia, dude. Yeah.
Do you?
Absolutely.
Dude.
Yeah, Wikipedia. Wikipedia.com, you pop into there, you can find out anything you want to know about Star Wars.
I always thought the cab drivers in New York kind of sounded like Wookiees, so anyway. Go ahead.
After the Old Republic, you pop into the High Republic, which is what Disney's getting into right now.
Oh, they are?
So,
okay.
It's 1,000 years before the Skywalker saga. So, while Yoda is alive, it is his earlier years.
Wow.
We don't have, there is not one Skywalker around. There is not one Emperor around. This is the height of the Republic. This is their golden age. The Jedi had 10,000 at the height of their power, and that's during this time, the High Republic. And they were out there, not necessarily, they weren't warriors. They were monks at the time. They would be on planets and help little villages or whatever to get their crops growing, to help with irrigation systems. They were never supposed to be the warriors that they became during the later on reign of during the fall of the Jedi.
So basically they were
which them being warriors is what led to the fall of the Jedi.
But they were supposed to be leaders and charismatic people that could help be the driver and things.
Yeah, I mean, to better the light. Yeah, they were always trying to make sure that light overcame darkness. While darkness is an important aspect of each life, there's still to drive a little bit of more positivity, if you will.
I love it. Where were you for this whole time when I don't know anything? But anyway, that's why we're doing this episode.
Yeah, and then during the High Republic, you did get the Acolytes, you get the Young Jedi Adventures, absolutely, but you also got the Nameless, which was a enemy that came up that could eat on the Force within the Jedi. So they would leave them as husks of themselves. The Jedi could
soul sucker, basically a soul sucker.
The Jedi could sense them coming, and they would be so fearful of them, of the darkness that was being poured into them and the light and life being sucked from them, that they would become husks of themselves, quite literally. Wow. That's quite an enemy to come up against. And they were introduced as an enemy as they're fighting who is essentially, I guess, the overall antagonist of this timeline, which would be Marchion Ro? I don't know that I'm saying that right, but Marchion Ro is the overall antagonist.
I'm going to go with your answer because I'm not sure.
who runs this, I can't think of what the organization's called, but he runs an organization that essentially wants to keep the Jedi and the Republic from expanding into the outer reaches and into the outer reaches of the Republic, which is the overall goal is for the Republic, is to continuously expand, bring new trade to the not Federation at the time, but to the Republic, keep bringing more peace and balance as far wide as possible. Which the Chancellor's name is So that builds that, and they do so by building, which essentially a satellite, but it's a space station out in the outer reaches. And dang it, I can't think of what this organization is, but Marchion Ro takes offense to this. He doesn't want them out, he doesn't want the Jedi out there because he hates the Jedi. His family had a schism with them several generations before, so it's a little revenge that he needs to get. But he has this whole team of people that's behind him, so he's going to go to war with the Jedi. The Jedi have to become warriors at this time. They're questioning themselves this entire time. Should we be involved in this? Is this something that the Republic doesn't have militaries? They never needed to have weapons. If they had fights, the Jedi would be there to solve them because they were great negotiators. So there wasn't a need for military forces from planet to planet because there was always a negotiator there.
Well, they also had a Jedi mind trick, didn't they?
They could use that, but the goal wasn't necessary. Yeah,
I'm throwing it in there.
No, they did have that.
My hat in the ring, if you will.
Aggressive negotiations was a tactic, and it was clearly a word that they used. But no, the overall goal for and the beauty of the Republic at the time was that there were no wars really. So what happened is there's this hyperspace disaster, which is what kicks off this High Republic, or the High Republic phase. A spaceship collides with another spaceship in hyperspace, which, as you can tell, even if that was to happen today, the speed of the two objects and the expansion of everything at those speeds is a huge calamity. Not only do they have to shut down all of the hyperspace lanes in the area, but debris is popping out of hyperspace at weird, odd points of time and could smash into a planet and destroy all life on it, right?
Right.
So the Jedi are in a huge need right now. They can't just be sitting on Coruscant. They can't be out here on this new satellite that they've built. They need to be all over the place so they can sense where these hyperspace objects are going to come out. And there's this one planet that they all come together on because several huge objects are going to come out. And they all team up and use this beautiful force meld to repel a good portion of objects, but unfortunately a lot of Jedi die in the attempt. So that's how the first phase kicks off. And then they start seeping, the Marcurian Row reveals himself, and they have another, not just a nameless, there's another like plant-eating species that they run into and set loose that the Sith had encountered several generations before and had imprisoned onto a space station to keep them from expanding. The Drenagir, that's the name of them. So they're a carnivorous plant-eating species. Crazy to think about. But they also, since they're a plant, they can expand exponentially very fast.
Yep.
So they get off. They make it off of this space station because the Jedi think that they know everything, and they think that, well, all they see is all these Sith talismans. These Sith talismans shouldn't be sitting on this space station. We should move these. So they take them to Coruscant just to find out that, well, we just released a huge Drenagir thing across the entire galaxy. So that not only are they fighting Marcurian Row, they're also having to fight these plant-based species, which leads to the Jedi teaming up with the Hutts to fight the plant-based species, and then eventually Marcurian Row and his gangsters.
There you go. Again, I took this and wrote this down in order. So.
They did, yeah. No, so then they haven't really finished. This storyline's still playing out. So that's pretty much where they're at on that one. Marcurian Row, they just went back and explained essentially why his family's upset with the Jedi, what had happened. Mm-hmm. I don't really recall the story off the top of my head right now, but there's some solid reasons for him to want revenge. But also his grandmother was a little crazy. So it's
sometimes fun. Sometimes your family can be that way.
Absolutely. But it did end with the Acolyte. So that the Acolyte was showing us that maybe the Jedi aren't right all the time. Maybe they do things wrong. Maybe they and they make questionable decisions. It's in the moment they may mean right, and they could feel that they're right that entire time, but from another perspective, they could very well be wrong, and it can have dire consequences because you've turned your very own Padawan to the dark side, and she chokes you to death. Which was, once again, just a great show. The Fall of the Jedi. So you get the Phantom Menace, you get Tales of the Jedi, you get Attack of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith. Absolutely, yeah. Each one of those we just talked about. Phantom Menace, you learn who Anakin is. Why is it this little kid just has the Force, and he can? It's supposed to be the most powerful person in the entire galaxy, and he's discovered on this backwater planet. He's essentially the Jesus of our story here because he does not have a father. There's still a debate going on, but everybody thinks that he was created by Darth Sidious and his master, Darth Plagueis.
So that would be like Immaculate Conception.
Somewhat. So
no, I'm not.
Yeah, no. I mean,
terms.
Right now, no.
I'm just throwing that, interjecting it. Yeah,
yeah. No. So the idea is that initially he was immaculate. That's what they put into the movies. But now we're trying. The idea is that Plagueis and Sidious sit down and they're meditating on the Force, and they tip the galaxy to darkness. So if you think of the galaxy as or the Force as a balancing beam.
Okay.
The dark side's on one side and the light side's on the other. The Emperor and Palpatine, or Sidious and his master Plagueis, are just sitting here meditating, trying to tip the scales into the dark side. Well, the light's going to want to try to fix that.
So what Chris is actually doing is, with his arms, because again, it's an audio, so he's got his arms outreached, and it's almost like a teeter-totter, where it's kind of going back and forth and tipping the scales and what's going on. So
what these two machinations are doing here, they tip the galaxy into darkness. So when that happens, the Force wants to correct itself. So
Correct.
They create Anakin.
That's in all things.
Right.
All things.
So Anakin isn't necessarily the light side, he's the balance.
Wow.
He's this right here. If Anakin's upset and wants to tip to the dark side, the entire fate of the galaxy tips to the dark side.
Wow.
If Anakin tips to the light, the entire galaxy tips to the light side. That is how powerful this kid is. And Qui-Gon discovers him on this backwater planet, seemingly out of nowhere.
Qui-Gon Jinn.
Absolutely.
Okay, again, because...
No, you're okay.
I'm working on it. I'm working on it. Doing the
I
research.
want your viewers to be able to... I got to explain it like that, and I appreciate it.
Yeah.
So Qui-Gon Jinn discovers him. obviously is killed, so he's not able to fulfill his promise, and that the kid's going to become a Jedi. Obi-Wan takes over on that. Probably not the best decision. Obi-Wan is just becoming a Jedi Knight himself.
Yeah.
So if Yoda and Windu are concerned about how Anakin's going to become, what kind of Jedi he's going to become, why didn't either of them take him on as an apprentice? That's their first failing.
That's a great question.
Absolutely.
Well, if you knew the potential of something and you didn't take advantage of it, and then it comes back to bite you on the backside later, like a revolution, something picking up speed, sooner or later you're not going to be able to control that speed. It's going to take over.
Right. Well, and that entire time, the Senator Palpatine's in the kid's ear, I'm going to be you. We're going to follow your career with great interest. We're going to be best friends because you will be my machinations. You are I created you. You will help me tip the galaxy into darkness. If Sidious did not have Anakin at his side at that point, at the point of Revenge of the Sith during Order 66, none of that was possible. If Anakin strikes down the Emperor or lets Windu do it, none of this story happens. That's how much power that kid has. That's just later on. To start with, the way that the books describe it is that Anakin just winning that pod race, had ramifications across the galaxy as well. There was multiple gangsters that had put in money on Sebulba to win that pod race.
I remember the pod races.
Right.
Yes.
So in the background, there's all that betting going on. A lot of the Jabba the Hutt lost butt on that pod race. A lot of gangsters, a lot of Darth Plagueis' circle lost a whole crud load of money on those pod races. So the ramifications of Anakin's actions from very early on were dictated things across the galaxy.
And see, this is the finite details, and Chris is amazing in this storytelling. I mean, I'm going along for a ride with you guys out there. This is amazing, just amazing content. It's podcast gold. And why is it gold? Because of the golden tones and wonderful insight when it comes to this episode. I'm serious. What are your views on everything else we're talking about right now? What do you see? Again, you're out there listening, overhearing. You're out there taking this in. What do you think about it? You can comment, but the biggest thing is you take this in and you get this, because right now, when even growing up and watching the movies and doing everything else, there's no way I'm getting any of this insight, any of these ideas, these subplots, and everything else in this world called Chatting and Chilling with Chris Part 1 on this. Again, this is Part 1. It's going to be more than one part, but for right now, let's just appreciate going back and getting back into this story with Chris.
So after the fall of Jedi, which couldn't happen without all of those machinations that I was telling you,
yes,
you pop into the reign of the Empire, which then you get Tales of the Empire as far as cartoon goes. You get Jedi Fallen Order, that's a video game. Bad Batch, that's another great little cartoon series. Solo, that wasn't during that time. That was more, well, I guess so actually, because that was... Yeah, they had to be around for the Age of the Rebellion, so that does make sense.
Well, you can tell Google they're wrong, Chris. It's okay. It's only AI.
And then you get the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, which I didn't touch base on, which had a couple of the best duels that you could ever possibly watch. You had to find out in the line during Return of the Jedi, but A New Hope, when he says, "I haven't seen you in so," or when Darth Vader says, "I haven't seen you in so long." That show defined that. It showed us the last time that Vader and Obi-Wan saw each other, and that they'd quite literally try to kill themselves or kill each other. Andor, that was another great show. Andor showed us not necessarily that the Force users non-Force users were struggling across the galaxy as well. That the reign of the Empire was not all that great for a lot of people, and that the rebellion didn't need to come. And Andor beautifully defined that. Star Wars Rebels, that was another great little cartoon series. Vader Immortal, that was a 3D game that is very fun, actually. I just played it not too long ago. And then you get Rogue One, which once again is the construction, just shows you the construction of the Death Star and the plans getting out, which kicks off into the Age of the Rebellion with the New Hope. the two movies quite literally butt up to each other. Right. It's a great little deal. Then you have Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, Battlefront 2. That was a great game. Squadrons. I never really got into that one, but Battlefront 2, that's a pretty fun one.
So my question, Chris, on all the things you're covering, I mean, you're going to get into more of this, but when it comes to, let's say, everybody else is out there, okay, Chris is explaining this, he's chopping it up, he's giving color commentary to it, everything else. How can we also check out and watch these different things? Is it streaming on?
All of it's on Disney.
I mean, it's on Disney.
Disney is king for Star
Disney's
Wars.
on
Yeah,
it.
no, you can't. Nothing. I don't know that you can view it on anything other than Disney. To be honest with you,
you're good. So Disney Plus. So here's the deal: is that
I don't know that you want to be plugging Disney Plus, man. Are they paying you?
No, they're not. Paying
no,
me. No.
Yeah, you just want to. You watch your shows where you watch them, man.
Well, what I'm trying to do is I'm just trying to, for everybody else out there listening in the process of podcast land, it's. Okay, he's talking about all these things, but how do I get a chance to hit pause on what he's saying and then watch it? You can
watch them on there, but I've really enjoyed the books. Each one of these has a book that goes along with it, and it will delve into the character dissection or what's happening,
I didn't know that.
Or the behind the scenes significantly more than what each of these than even the TV shows can give you.
So basically, everything you're talking about right now has books. There's books and context.
Or a comic book? Are you kidding?
Comic
That's
book.
The funnest way to get into these.
So then that's okay. So then there's that part. That then you can also watch everything.
Yeah, Star Wars is a multimedia. Okay. Yeah, that's one of the great things about their content is that they try to get it into as many people's hands as possible in as many ways as possible. Yeah. So books, comic books. They have their own podcasts. They have. Any way that you want to get your Star Wars content, you can get it into you.
Right.
Most people enjoy visuals, so comic books, TV shows, all that stuff is going to be available to you on Disney Plus. Comic books, you have to go. You can find them digitally, but go to your local comic book store. They miss you. Their sales are not all that great that much anymore. Digitally, a lot of these comic books can go straight to your iPad. But having a good old-fashioned piece of paper in your hand is just as good. And we are nerds. If you find those first editions, people like to buy those. They do become more. They do carry value throughout time.
And Chris is important. Chris has got a good statement on this because here's the thing: it's called brick and mortar, and it's the fabric of our country.
It should
be
the
fabric of the world, really.
It should be
bookstores and everything else, and five and dime stores or whatever else you can find.
Do not bug your local UPS man for it. No more Barnes and Nobles. Don't do that. Go to the local comic book store. Go to your local Barnes and Nobles. Yes, they would. They want to see you.
The local curious shop that has a book section in the back. And this guy is basically going to be able to, in an amazing form, be able to detail out exactly what you're looking for and things like that, and be a part of it.
Yeah, I can assure you, whoever's in, they'll have a Star Wars section.
And so, Chris, what's awesome is you're plugging all this, you're talking about all this, but then you're also plugging brick and mortar, you're plugging small business, and the way in which communities and the country and the world really needs to be taken care of.
I agree.
Tending to the garden known as the world.
I agree.
Look at you.
Trying.
Not setting the world on fire. Not setting the world.
By example.
Look
sir.
at you.
Trying. We all got to do our part, sir.
That's why we're chatting and chilling with Chris. He's from here in Pueblo, Colorado. He knows who he is, and now you do too.
Let's see. All right, then. After the Age of Rebellion, we pop into the New Republic, that we were just touching on that. That's how you get the Mandalorian, the new Boba Fett series, the Ahsoka series. Skeleton Crew's not quite out just yet, but that's going to probably be awesome. You got Jude Law as an unknown. We don't know that he's a Jedi yet, but we all know he's a Jedi. So that's going to be a great story. I think they're calling it Stranger Things in Space. Or not Stranger Things. What was the other? There was a kids movie that we all used to love as a child. You guys.
Oh, that's the Goonies.
Yes, the Goonies in space. That's what they're saying. The Skeleton Crew.
So you're saying that Chunk is okay to go in
Chunk
and get in the space
is probably going to be in this show. You will have your own version of Chunk.
Awesome.
Yeah, a little cute elephant looking kid. He's going to drive quite a bit of merchandising sales.
Really?
Yeah. 4 little kids lost in the galaxy, come across a Jedi. I'm not quite sure that that's the story just yet, but that's just what the promos look like it's going to be. Going to be awesome, though. Jude Law is a hell of an actor. We all know he's going to end up being a Jedi. Not certain just yet, but we all know.
Yeah, I was about to dive in and say, because here's the thing. Jude Law is an amazing method actor, and for that whole franchise to get a pull on Jude Law or someone of his caliber and his abilities, I mean, here's what I think. You get him in there, it's going to start flocking to other people, other better actors and great actors coming in.
Yeah. Well, so traditionally, actually, Star Wars doesn't bring in a lot of big, huge actors. They are grassroots. Look at John Boyega wasn't a huge actor before Star Wars. Can't think of what her name is.
I like her,
but she's a hell of an actress. But she got her kickoff as Rey.
But she has watching her in The Last Jedi, right? Is that right?
Yeah.
Did I get that one right?
Yeah, you did.
Okay,
you did great.
I'm going to put one on the chalk, my side of the chalkboard.
You've done great.
Okay,
this whole time.
She was amazing, intense. She had some funny parts, but she was completely and literally believable when you thought of her and you thought of who she is in the series. She sold it. Yeah. She sold it.
She had no idea who she was, and it made you question if you knew who you were. Like,
right.
And it did so in a way that made you what's the best way to put this? Not just it started off as who am I? Who are my parents? And does that define who I am? Does that define what my future is? What does that define? And then it evolves into who am I?
Right.
What do I want to be? It's not necessarily light side. It's not necessarily dark side. It's my parents don't dictate who that is. It's right. The actions that I take, right? So who am I? And then finally making that decision. I'm a Skywalker.
Right.
I don't care where I come from. I don't care what my lineage is. This is who I am.
And that's another, when we go into Star Trek versus Star Wars and everything else, not really versus, but anyway, you get the point. The other thing is also on Star Wars is the conflicts, the problems, and everything else you have running through your head and all the other things that you go through as an individual turmoil and everything else are the same things that are portrayed and playing out in their integral parts as a part of an entire process. When it comes to everything, it's that one person, that cog, that the other piece of the jigsaw puzzle. It all happens to fit and work in a dynamic tapestry known as Star Wars. You get the same things you go through. Okay, you're growing up. This is what you're going through. It's that same process and the same happy feelings, bad feelings, sad feelings, all the emotions and everything else we have going on is what Star Wars has always had the ability to portray. And at the end, if you feel like you've gone through a roller coaster because you're going through the same thing in your life, with the same thing with my episodes and a lot of my episodes dealing with, mental health and dealing with emotions and depression and suicide, all these other things that we go through because, again, it matters to you. We're doing it here on this podcast. It's the same thing that's translatable and personable and in the process
relatable
of
you,
Star Wars, and everyone else. That's where they kind of get you.
That's the key to any good storytelling, really.
Yes,
if you want to be able to be in that, you want that to be then you want to be the narrator or the key main character. Absolutely.
Yes.
And Star Wars does do a great job of that. They haven't really... The Rise of... What do you have there?
Let's see. Age of Rebellion, The New Republic, Rise of the First Order.
Ah, yes. So that was... Yeah, no, you're okay.
Okay. I'm old. I'm a guy. I'm left-handed. And see, here's the thing. Everybody else uses laptops and they do everything else and they store it and all this. I'm old school.
Still uses
I literally
paper.
write
Love it. Yeah.
Because here's the thing. In psychology, the only way you remember anything, the only way you can truly commit yourself to anything is by simply writing it down.
I did not know that.
And you're making that vested interest in ensuring that you're writing it down. It means it matters to you. It's something that's important and it needs to get out there. So that's why I still remain in the process of writing everything out. And so that way, let's say all the technology goes down, the power goes, everything else goes out. I still have every single episode. I still have everything I have.
Love it. So yeah, no, this does say Rise of the First Order.
Yes, sir.
So you do have Star Wars Resistance. That was a cartoon show. You got The Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, both movies, great movies, really. Star Wars Tales from the Galaxy's Edge. I didn't personally spend the $5,000 to go into character for that story, but somebody did, and I'm sure that story's out there somewhere.
But Chris, Here's the thing. If you had that much, because right now, you're already saying we and our to
It's my
Star
franchise.
Wars.
I'm
exactly.
invested.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, no,
but what I'm
fan.
saying is, I'm going to go with you. Like if you were going to buy stock in that as being a stock, like on the stock market,
You
you're
should.
going to.
I am a big investor
you're
in
gonna,
Disney.
Well, you're going to back up, and this other edge part you're talking about, and you're not going to get into that. Guess what? We're going again. Everybody listening.
Oh, it doesn't
on this
exist
podcast,
anymore, so it's pointless to even talk about.
What I'm saying is that obviously it was something that didn't matter to you. Your heart's in it. Your heart, mind, and soul is all a part of this process.
Well, kind of. I mean, it was.
Yeah.
They didn't market it very well. The cost was just too high. I'm not that guy. I'm not going to spend that for.
But what I'm
for
saying is, if it
experience.
was worth the time, juice is worth the squeeze.
Oh no! If I
else
had an
down the
extra
line-
$5,000 laying around, I'd have been there in a heartbeat. But
Right.
that's just not the way that life worked out for me.
But that's what I'm getting at here, and that's what I'm saying, Chris. Is that here's the thing: if you look at it and you go, "Nah, I'm good," guess what? I'm not going there.
Well,
you know,
I'm not saying that if you have an extra
No, I don't.
one, it doesn't exist anymore. But
Right.
if you did,
Right.
it wouldn't have been a bad experience. It
Right.
was an immersive hotel. You walked in, you got to pick, or beforehand, before you ever got there, you got to pick what your character was. You could be a Jedi, you could be a Darksider, you could be whatever you wanted to be while you were there. A smuggler.
Okay.
So you get there, you're in full garb.
So it's like
the
cosplay.
entire
So it's
time.
like cosplay.
The entire time you're there. Yeah.
Really?
Absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah, and you're right around the corner from Star Wars, or all the Star Wars rides. It's full.
Really?
Yeah, at the Disney park. So you get to pop over there, enjoy your day there, go back there. You're back in character. You're Luke Skywalker or whoever you happen to want to be for that evening. Yeah, it's just.
That's pretty neat. That's a good concept.
Yeah, no, it was a great concept. It was just god-awful expensive, and not too many people went to go do it. There was a waiting line initially, and once I got through that waiting line, it just didn't work out too well.
Okay.
Then the Rise of Skywalker, which closed it all out. A lot of people were disappointed with the way the trilogy ended, but I wasn't one of them. I really enjoyed it. Like I said, she questioned who she was based off of what her lineage was. She made the decision on who she was going to be, and then became that person in the third film. And I'm not sad at that. That's how I define those. And I'm not sad that she's a Palpatine or any of that. Wasn't my story to tell. That's the way that the cookie crumbled. Then you get into the new Jedi Order, which we still haven't really gotten into, and we're all really excited to find out just how Rey decides to rebuild the Order. But unfortunately, there are talks of that movie being canceled. So,
See, a long time ago, people would invest in something, they would take a chance, and then they would go out and do it. And now, it's like in baseball.
well, like I said, I mean, it was going to be a huge thing, and following Ahsoka, Star Wars had a great following. So whenever a season of Mandalorian comes out, absolutely everybody's positive about Star Wars. Everybody wants to be in on it. So then you pop it, but then you have the negative, the acolyte that comes out. So then all the execs look at it and say, well, maybe we shouldn't do 5 more films. So it's just a back and forth pendulum with us.
It's interesting. So basically, then I write little notes here. I wrote a little note, and I'll read this note for you. Every saga has a beginning, middle, and end. The stories of the galaxy far, far away span thousands of years with eras defined along wars. Wars continues to expand, to evolve. These eras provide a sense of scope to an epic tale still to be told.
Yeah, and the great thing about not only are they still telling that story.
That's me just kind of.
Yeah, no, I get you, but I wanted to right now. Disney's big, huge push is questioning just perspectives, which is awesome to me because we all thought. I mean, throughout all of the movies, we all thought, "Oh, the Jedi are great. The Jedi are good. The Jedi are the good guys. The Sith are the bad guys."
You're right. You always thought that.
Yeah, and now they're saying, "Well, that's just a point of view," which is a great way to tell a story. Like, maybe the Jedi aren't all that great. Maybe the Sith do have a point. Maybe the Empire did need to rise. Maybe, yeah. I mean, it's just...
I love it.
Yeah, that's
awesome.
What's beautiful about that franchise.
That's introspect because, some of the kindest, nicest, wonderful people that you ever meet could be the most calm, cool, and collected, could also be a sociopath. And right underneath your feet, you have the neighbor. His name is Jeffrey Dahmer. Let's go over and meet Jeffrey. Let's see how he's doing.
I'm good. Thank you, though.
Yeah. And you have all these other serial killers. You have all, the show Dexter. That we can get into that some other time.
It's the calm ones.
But it's just, it's the ones that don't say much, that do, when they do speak, they mean it. And like I said, they lower the temperature of the room while without their pulse changing, they become that.
Couldn't agree more.
All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and read this quick timeline for Star Trek, the next Star Trek itself. And so getting into this, like I said, they pretty much skip back and forth in time, unless you want to run this.
I don't mind, yeah.
You run it.
Cool. Look, so I can't really get into each one of these, but I will try.
But this gives us at least some, it gives us a semblance of what's going on. We can better understand it. Again, I'm not totally Trekkie. I did watch the series. Tribbles were these funny little characters. Bottom line is, this gives us some semblance, and the quotes there, that's all Star Trek.
Gotcha.
Okay.
All right, so it starts off with The Next Generation. Then you have Enterprise. You got Star Trek Generations following that. Then you have Star Trek, the animated series. Then they started getting into their movies, which would be The Wrath of Khan, which sounded a lot of people really like, or really, really hate, which is just awesome. It's a great aspect to their fandom as well.
The actor Ricardo Montalban played Khan. He played it perfect. It made you angry. Okay, here's the thing. You're never going to believe in a serial killer. You're never going to follow a serial killer or believe in what he says. But then you're going to fall for what? Dexter, because he has a code. So going back to it, Khan is that same kind of maniacal person. He believes in so many things, but he's still so crazy and so it's my favorite. It's my favorite Star Trek movie. Sorry.
No, you're great. Yeah. No, thanks for hopping in on that. Let's see, and then you have Star Trek 3: The Search for Spock. Sounds like he came up missing. The Voyage, Star Trek. What is that? 4? Yep. The Voyage Home.
Oh, and by the way, if he was missing, the technology is so advanced, and it's Spock. Why couldn't you find him? Where's the GPS? Yeah. Where the bleep? Where is he?
Should have just been able to transfer him right back.
Or here we go. Here's a movie reference for you, dude. Where's my Spock?
Yeah, but no.
Okay, go ahead. Continue.
We got the Final Frontier. 6 was the Undiscovered.
The Undiscovered Country.
Oh no, I did not know that it existed at all.
The Undiscovered Country.
And then I heard about Deep Space Nine was a little bit out whenever I was a kid, and that looks like it was defined between 2369 and 2379, or 2375. And then you have First Contact. I can recall that one just a little bit. Then you have Star Trek Insurrections, Star Trek Nemesis, then Star Trek The Motion Picture, which I would have sworn that was the first one. But that's probably, he's doing it based off a timeline, so that makes sense.
I'm going off a timeline. But then when you get into Picard, he kind of gave you a different look, a different nuance, a different kind of a way in which to think of things, really, when it came to the small screen.
I couldn't really tell you. The only series that I'm familiar with is the Picard Discovery.
You got some more over here.
Yeah, no, I hadn't. The only Picard that I'm familiar with is the new series that came out, which I really enjoyed. It first explored AI and robotics, and then got into a couple other storylines that I can't really recall off the top. But he seemed like he was interesting, had unique views, and was a very much so respected person and I think theirs is the Federation.
Federation, yeah.
Yeah. So
the Federation again, I just think he had more problem solving, more logic, more reason, more common sense. Again, I'm not all big about the series. I just seem like going from Kirk and then now going from Picard to Picard as their captains. He just gave you kind of a different light, a different way in which to look at things. And
following his reign, you had Voyager, which I didn't necessarily. I think that was your first black captain, wasn't it?
I'm not sure.
I think so, man. Oh no! That was your first woman captain. Even better.
Okay.
And then Deep Space Nine. And Star Trek Prodigy, which is one of those new cartoons that are out on Paramount Plus.
Look at that.
Then you have Star Trek Strange New Worlds, which that is that's telling Christopher Pike's story, which you were just getting into earlier, who was the captain before even
Kirk.
Right.
Captain Kirk.
And then Star Trek the Animated Series. Then Star Trek Voyager series, which was also a cartoon. Star Trek Lower Decks, which they're still writing those ones right now, but it seems to be a timeline time that runs from the year 2380 onwards. And then you have Strange New Worlds, Well, no, Strange New Worlds is just the time is between 2259 and it hasn't really ended yet, but it has to end before Star Trek Enterprise because that's when Kirk and Picard all start their.
Right.
Then you also have Star Trek Prodigies, which is the ones that come afterwards. You got Picard and them's kids who are now leading the Federation, which is exciting. You got to love the generational interest in the stars and wanting to explore what's out there.
Yeah, so basically, I mean, the interesting part about Star Trek, it's all time travel, basically. And then they pop into a situation, deal with whatever they're confronted with, and do the best they can do in the situations. It's interesting how...
You didn't get Discovery in there.
The timelines are.
No Discovery? Yeah. Now, Discovery was Michael Burnham's story, and that was great. That is Spock's sister. And
well, Google failed me then, sorry.
No, you're okay. No, that's...
Go ahead.
That was a great story. So she's Spock's sister. She unfortunately thought that she was doing the right thing and attempted to overthrow her captain, starts a war with the Klingons. That captain ends up taking back over their ship. Michael Burnham ends up in prison, but does kick off a war that lasts for at least 100 years against the Klingons.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that part. I didn't know. I mean, again...
No, it was a great little series. No, I've been trying to keep up with
it was on there.
Yeah, no, it was a great one. It just ended. I didn't get in on the ending, but Michael Burnham eventually becomes her own ship captain. Spock does help her do some time travel antics, so she's well into the future, so she's not going to end up messing with any of these timelines. And we did get to see another live-action Spock, which was kind of cool. The actor did a really good job. And I don't think he carried over.
And this is coming from a Star Wars guy. Hello, everyone out there.
Yeah, no, I thought he did a great job.
No, that's what I'm saying. Game recognizes game.
It was a good movie.
Appreciate the game. So, franchise is set in the future, ranging from the 22nd century, Enterprise, late 24th century, Picard, Discovery. Now, this is where I got it written in here. Discovery jumps forward to the 32nd century using time travel plots. Go back and forth through time's portal with exploration.
They just went forward.
Yeah. But I'm just saying in general, just the overall series, just in case, because a lot of people out there may not even know who Star Trek is.
They do have a time force, which is kind of cool, that monitors all of that.
So basically, then
which we'll have to think about eventually as well.
And here's a key leader for Star Trek is the fact that they always start with Stardate, because again, they're marking where they actually are right now. And then once they get back to wherever they go, they always mention the Stardate as into where they are, so they can kind of pinpoint, kind of like a triangulation of GPS or something. They're able to keep that log of them to their time travel times, and that's why they always use Stardate.
Interesting.
As the opening to anything they do is always mentioned as that because of where they are presently.
Did not know
where they are in that moment.
Gotcha.
Exactly. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to throw another bumper break on here. Give us a chance to chop this up. We're going to come back, and I'm going to have some funny factoids and different sayings from both franchises. Anyway, that's what we'll do. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to chop this. We're going to chop this up with another break. Come back, do the factoids, the fun stuff that you maybe even the amazing, incomparable Chris may be new to him.
I'm looking forward to it.
No, dude, he knows a ton. I'm with you on this trip, riding along with you on this moment, enjoying this process and this opportunity to be here with Chris in this episode. Because he's like the great painter, and his orchestration and tapestry is this episode, and he's just simply painting in the strokes and getting us to understand and better fill in the gaps, if you will, when we're talking about this episode.
Well, thank you.
No, thank you. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go into a break. So, all right. So again, this is episode 55 of the Arena of Ideas podcast. It is Chatting and Chilling with Chris, part 1, Star Wars versus Star Trek, and we'll be right back. All right, everybody. Welcome back. Again, this is episode 55 of the Arena of Ideas podcast. I've already explained the title. Again, welcome back, and we're going to dive right back into going into some classic sayings from both Star Wars and Star Trek, and then go into some factoids and everything else, and then kind of wrap a bow and put some closure on this. We'll get some more things going. All right? Okay.
And we're back. I think you were about to get into your own little tidbits and whatnot on Star Wars.
Yeah, the classic sayings.
Yeah.
Classic sayings, yep. Or do you want to read it?
Go for it.
Okay, so, never tell me the odds is one of the ones for... I'm going to start with Star Wars here. So, never tell me the odds, do or do not.
That's one of my favorites, actually. I use that at work all the time. Yeah, there is no try. Do or do not.
Strike me down, I'll be more.
That one's not as famous, but yeah.
Okay. Again, these are just ones I took from Powerful from Obi-Wan.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Luke, I am your father.
That one.
Who has never not used that?
Yeah, that's iconic. That popped questions into people's heads. Was he lying for 10 years straight? And just... Vader was lying. No, he's his dad. No, he had to have been lying. Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's an argument that raged for 10 straight years. That's awesome.
And if on a magazine like Time magazine, is Vader Luke's father? It's kind of. I think that stuff made like every magazine.
You're kidding. Wow.
I think that made because it was a huge impact. It was a huge pop culture impact.
That's cool.
Right, because Star Trek and Star Wars have affected pop culture, social conscience. It's affected everything. It's made its big impression on everything, even down to taglines and everything else. All right, so it's a trap.
Yeah, that one's awesome.
Sound familiar?
Oh yeah, Admiral Akbar.
Why you stuck up, half-witted, scruffy-looking nerd herder?
Nerf herder.
Nerf herder.
Yeah. No, they didn't have nerd. I'm the nerd. They don't.
Oh, nerf herder. Okay, yep. Sorry. That's no moon.
That one's scary. That was scary.
It's the ship that made the Kessel run in less than 12 seconds.
I believe it was 8 parsecs, actually.
Was it?
No, that's what Solo says.
But again, I'm going off with Chris. You can correct me any day.
No. That's what Han would say.
Yeah. Would he?
Yeah, he would say. I believe it was 8 parsecs. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, okay. It's like the basic situation where people run the quarter mile.
Uh-huh.
Oh, I did it in 10 seconds. They did it in 9 seconds. They did it in 8 seconds. Okay.
Yeah.
I get it.
But it was defined in the Solo story. And it was awesome movie.
So maybe Chris remembers this. I love you.
I know.
Mm-hmm. Look at you.
I use that often.
May the Force be with you.
Every May 4th, you hear that all day long.
Do you?
Yeah. May the 4th be with you.
May the 4th be with you. Your focus determines... I didn't know that part.
Yeah.
Explain that.
Yeah, Revenge of the 5th. We don't do anything special for it. It's just, Revenge of the 5th.
You heard we in that. I'm telling you, he lives, breathes, and is Star Wars.
I have friends for fans, yeah.
Yep. Your focus determines you.
I haven't heard that one. That's a good one.
I think
determines your reality. Interesting.
I think that is Yoda, I believe. Qui-Gon. I can't remember. Or it's Qui-Gon. Oh, wait. Your focus determines your reality, Qui-Gon Jinn. Mm-hmm. Excuse me. I'm no Jedi. I don't know who said that. I am no Jedi. That's one of the sayings from one of them. Use the Force, Luke.
Yeah,
of course, I've heard that one.
Yeah, everybody has.
Note, Yoda had so many philosophies that are epic and legendary. We didn't mention them all, but there's just, dude, he had so many.
Yeah.
Everything he said, he would basically turn into
a riddle.
A riddle or, yeah. So he is an enigma. Mm-hmm. A riddle wrapped in a mystery.
Yeah. Great character.
All right, fashion styles, concepts. Designs are a unique mix of spaghetti westerns, 20th century military, Eastern/exotic, and medieval styles.
There's music playing. The
large use of capes. It was someone trying to call me. Sorry. Yeah, you guys all know I get phone call. At least they get a call. All right. All right, so before we're rudely interrupted, basically, The large use of capes and cloaks in use as well, of course. Again, that's just stuff I looked up. That's kind of what they based the wardrobe and things when it came to everybody.
Well, they were supposed to be defined as monks initially, so a lot of their wardrobe was robes to start with, but as they moved into the more warriors, they would fashion and add more armor to their clothing.
Did they?
Yeah, you see the evolution from the Old Republic and the Acolyte shows, and that they were all rocking just gold and white robes, and towards the end, Anakin and Obi-Wan are both wearing armor for their Jedi garb.
And even down to the colors of the lightsabers and everything, right?
That can be defined.
That's all different. Those are all
blue
different.
Blue means just a good old-fashioned Jedi Knight. They're more about just being they're a knight. They go from village to village trying to right wrongs. Yellow was like more of an investigator. You would be like a cop, essentially. A murder happens. I'm the yellow lightsabered guy that comes to do the investigation. Green was Yoda's color, which was more of a not necessarily a master's color, but they would use they were always trying to look for better and different ways to use the Force and applying different philosophies to the Force and just contemplating the Force all the time.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. No, because I knew there was...
And red's evil, obviously. You have to bleed a crystal in order to make it red.
Really?
Yeah. They show that in the Acolyte, too. Yeah. It's pretty cool.
That's interesting. I know the colors meant... I knew the colors had different meanings.
So in the old ways, you could just find red... In the old canon, you could just find a red crystal. But in this new canon, you have... A Sith has to kill a Jedi and then take and pour all of its hate and anger into this crystal in order to turn it red. And
really?
It's called bleeding a crystal. Yep.
I did not know that.
Yeah, pretty neat.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Compelling.
Yeah.
I would never even known that in my lifetime.
Beautiful, beautiful little scene that they show that.
Really?
How that happens, yep.
Amazing. So then Star Trek, I got a couple of them. Again, for time's sake and everything else, and we're not going to go through everything, but Live Long and Prosper, obviously, that's of course Spock. Yeah. Insufficient facts always invite danger. That's another one. Love is the beginning of wisdom.
Never heard that.
This one you've heard. Everyone's heard this. Beam me up, Scotty.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Of course. Highly illogical.
Yeah,
of course, you know who
Spock
that is.
Again.
Yep. Love sometimes expresses itself in sacrifice.
Interesting.
Yep. Again, they had some good lines and stuff too in Star Trek.
Well, they were more built around teamwork, not the individual.
Exactly. That's where also in here I explained that that it's more of a team concept, it's more of a society, and it's more for the better good of everything.
Right.
And then you go over to the other side, and it's the individuals and they're rogue and all the outlaw kind of stuff and all that good stuff. So yeah, computers make excellent, efficient servants. That's another one from there.
Interesting.
Again, I had no idea, but anyway, I beg your pardon. That's another one. This is Picard here, I believe. Make it so, I believe is what Picard said.
Huh.
Make it so. Then there's I'm a doctor, not a fill in the blank, and that's Bones. That's the doctor for Star Trek.
Right before my day.
Right. Resistance is futile.
I know that one. Those are the Borgs.
Where no man's gone before. Well, now they would have to change that, of course, in this whole cultural thing we have now. They can't leave it at that. It would be there would be some trouble. So Spock was Yoda for Star Trek, basically, and that's what I put down myself. Again, fashion, style, and concepts for humans, bold colors, and tight clothing is what they used. Spoke of an eccentric and positive perspective. Star Trek radiated a bright future for humanity through fashion. And again, that's what they did. And again, they had kind of the same uniforms and everything. It was all, no pun intended, but it was all uniforms. You
didn't want to wear a red one for sure.
Right, exactly. Exactly. That could be problems. So anyway, there's that. And we already did the timeline. Let's see. Give me some ideas. What do you think about the list you just heard there? I know you knew probably most of it.
Oddly enough, the Star Trek ones were all pretty foreign to me. I knew a few of the one-liners that are fairly frequent, but Star Trek wasn't really my thing. I can quote.
No, you're good. Yeah, no, you're fine. I just, like I said, I didn't know a lot of that stuff either. I didn't know a lot of the sayings and everything else, but just being able to look them up and then write them down.
That's wild.
Right.
I didn't realize they had so many sayings on love. That's unique.
Oh, I know. It's interesting.
Yeah.
That's just an interesting, different process or situation here. So basically, I got some factoids.
Okay.
Again, some fun
Spit 'em
ones.
at me. What you got?
Okay, so Yoda's species. George Lucas never revealed Yoda's species, giving him a mythical persona.
True story. We still ponder where the heck did Grogu come from? Did Yoda and Yaddle get down, and that's their children? We don't know, but Jedi aren't supposed to get down. But did they get special permission because maybe they're the last of their species, or is there a whole planet full of Yodas that are all Force sensitive like that out there? We don't know. No, never been defined for us. Pretty dope though. But they did give us not only Yoda, but then Yaddle, and now Baby Grogu. So they have to come from somewhere.
Well, and then you also talked about all the Jedis going down and just a handful being left.
Right. So when the Emperor did that, he did not go through and if the planet was never ever, there's clearly in Star Wars multiple references to planets being lost to time even. So
right.
The galaxies are huge. So a planet with a whole species that hasn't been found is definitely something that could be out there.
Interesting. And like I said, it kind of makes sense though with Yoda because again, he's there for his philosophy and for his ideas and for
he was very powerful too.
Yeah.
I mean, he was the species. I mean, we don't know if it's genetics that makes him as powerful as they are, but clearly with Grogu, it's the same thing. He has very little instruction and yet has a lot of power over the Force. And they also have longer lifespans, and with longer lifespan, you're going to get more wisdom and knowledge. And towards the end of that 1,000 years that Yoda lived for 1,000 years. 1,000 years to the day he died.
Wow.
And during that time, during 1,000 years, you're going to learn a lot. You're going to fail a lot, which is how you learn your lessons, which is another thing that Yoda teaches you.
So the funny thing is that when people go up to you and tell you something like, I never fail, I never this or that, they're lying to themselves because that's truly the only way you can actually learn in this life.
Somewhat, yeah.
Some degree.
Yeah. Well, there's people that, I mean, Charlie Sheen would not have been able to walk around saying, I'm winning if he wasn't constantly winning.
Well, when you got tiger's blood, I mean, hey.
Yeah, you're winning.
All right, so let's see. Ahsoka's name comes from the Indian Emperor Ashoka the Great. Screenwriters changed the spelling.
I did not know that. That's unique.
Yeah, like I said, I had no idea, but it's interesting fun little tidbits and things that I found.
She was a very unique character that was just created for a little side movie that George Lucas did and then blew up.
So basically I'm going along for the ride with you here. So Ahsoka, give us an idea of who Ahsoka is.
She's Anakin's apprentice.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. She in the original movies, she was never talked about, obviously, so it was either a sore spot or had to have been a new invention. And as we've been learning more about Ahsoka, it's clearly more of a sore spot. There's a solid chance that she could have brought him back from the light side and failed to do so.
Interesting.
And didn't get a chance because she was someplace else.
Interesting. I saw the name and I figured we would talk about this and I could get, again, some more perspective. Kind of like the Order 66. People keep calling me.
You're good.
All right. So anyway, Qui-Gon's communicator, it's a woman's razor.
Did not know that.
Yep,
That's cool.
It's a woman's razor.
That's cool. Again.
All right. Sorry, guys. Okay. Here we go. Porgs. In The Last Jedi are new creators that live on the island of Octu, where Luke Skywalker is exiled.
They weren't necessarily creators. They were those cute little things that kept on that were Chewbacca was cooking and hanging out with on the ship. Those were the Porgs. The caretakers were the aliens that Bray kept pissing off by destroying the huts.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, here's one for you, and I don't know if you knew this or not, but Yoda was almost played by a monkey.
No, did not know that. That's pretty weird.
Okay, the opening text crawl took hours to film.
That's wild. I would not have thought that.
Because of technology. They didn't have all the technology. That would take...
Interesting.
And it'd be like using a typewriter. And a long time ago, typewriters, if you went through and you screwed anything up, if you could, a lot of times you couldn't erase it. You'd have to like tear it up.
Right. And
start all over again.
Yeah, wow. No, I did not know that.
So that whole process is like that. So lightsabers were wrapped in reflective tape.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Did you know that part? Mm-hmm. Yeah, look at you. Jabba the Hutt was operated by multiple people.
That makes sense to you.
He's huge, though, right?
Yeah,
He's big.
yeah. The puppet work with the original films was amazing. All of them were puppets.
Yeah.
There was no special effects.
Right,
That's
no special
crazy.
effects, right. Star Wars Day is celebrated annually, first noted in 2011.
Yeah. May the 4th. It's a great day.
Cultural
I myself
impact.
wear a Yoda hat with big, huge Yoda ears.
Really?
Yeah, you've seen it.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Yes, I have. Cultural impact. The sounds, visuals, and score of the films have become an integral part of American society.
Oh, yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, we all know that. We're about to watch Star Wars, bro.
Right.
Yeah.
Science fiction boom. The film helped launch the science fiction boom of the late 70s and early 80s.
That's why I did not know that. That's pretty interesting.
It did. In fact, like I said, they had you had sci-fi, you had all these different things going on, but it was clunky. It was kind of it was okay. I mean, Lost in Space was a show that was on TV.
Interesting. Okay.
So that was kind of interesting because they're lost in space, but Lost in Space might as well be The Walking Dead.
Sure.
Because they're never going anywhere. They're stuck. Or like Gilligan's Island or something where they're stuck. I mean, they did have some nuances and different things, like I said, like Lost in Space and different things that they had going on. But for space, like I said, Star Trek may have begun it, but Star Wars has really
well-defined
raised it.
character or well-defined villains, I guess, or somebody that you're actually fighting, as opposed to your problem being, at least in Lost in Space, more man versus machine or man versus man instead of man versus, or even man versus the environment was the majority of those episodes, wasn't it?
Exactly.
Just surviving.
And I'm not, like I said, I'm not aficionado on Lost in Space.
The latest series that Netflix did, great stuff if you ever get a chance.
What's that?
They did a remake of Lost in Space.
Oh, they did?
Yeah, on Netflix.
Oh, okay.
Great stuff.
On Netflix.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll have to check that out. Well, then you've also got Battleship Troopers. You've got
Starship Troopers.
I
think that was the late '90s, and that still has a great cult.
But still,
early '90s, but great movie.
But but those two main franchises are the ones that had brought all these. You figure like Buck Rogers in the 21st Century.
That's wild.
Lost in Space.
I hadn't really thought about that.
You've got and then there's way more than that. I mean, I'm not even touching base. I'm just saying the ones I can think of in my head. You did have all these other things, but if you don't have, like I said in history. In order to become a part, in order to speak the story of history of whatever it might be, that has to be, so Star Trek and Star Wars, you can't speak of the history of space and all of these other things without talking about Star Trek and Star Wars. You can't talk about that history and about what's going on with that. You can't. It's not possible. So that's where you know what greatness is. If you can't add that, if you can't talk the story of it without incorporating that, it's not great.
Fair enough.
That's all. And then Star Trek, on September 8th, 1966, Star Trek debuted on NBC, transformed sci-fi TV from a stigma of bland and boring to new, exciting, and complex. They came up with some different stuff. It's all new, because like I said, they had the Forbidden Planet. You had all these different things that are going on, all these different shows and things, but this brought you to where you could be anywhere, you could go somewhere, and you're going to meet new and different places and go to all these different things, and they're going to take you along for the ride.
Gotcha.
That was Star Trek. Captain Pike preceded Captain Kirk. Spock was the only bridge character on the unpaired pilot called The Cage. So basically, Spock's the only thing from the original when they first came out with the series with Pike and everything else. And then they were going to actually, they went to a focus group to list, to see what they thought. And then they brought Kirk and everything in. At that point, Spock's the only bridge character that was actually between both. They didn't know what to do, and the only one that came over.
Interesting.
So when it came to the rest of the crew, and when you met the crew, Uhura and Doc and all these other people and Scotty and all of them, you met them for the first time. Because again, that's the only way you actually met them was then.
Okay.
So it's interesting. Like I said, let's see. Star Trek's original number 1 was a woman. They were actually going to have it be a woman instead of Spock.
That's cool.
Gene Roddenberry's wife.
That's
Again,
cool.
Gene Roddenberry wanted his wife to be involved. So she wasn't all involved in all the shows, but not to the capacity of Spock. Of course, Leonard Nimoy is an amazing, comparable person and created that character and that mantra of that character. But that's interesting. Yeah, it wasn't going to be, the original idea wasn't going to be
That's
a
beautiful,
male
really.
or Spock. It was going to be a female.
That's beautiful. A lot of things that show's formed a lot of opinions, and it's beautiful.
Yep. So basically, they called them test audiences. Didn't like her because she was too overbearing and pushy. So because of that, it felt like that was going to override the captain. It's pretty much going to override the captain and not make it a sympathetic, type of a
She's not
situation.
following orders. She
she's
could
not
be
going to
challenging more.
Yeah, she's going to like she's trying to run the
Right.
show. So again, test audiences. Who knew, right? Okay, so Roddenberry's wife worked on every Star Trek series.
That's cool.
Again, until they actually lost, they basically pushed him aside, and then he lost. They had other controls and other ways in which they controlled that entire franchise. But at the time, when he was in charge and he was the one running it, and he was the creative influence for the show or for the franchise, she was in every one of them.
That's neat.
Captain Kirk had a dark past before Star Trek. William Shatner was in dark films and TV projects that basically were very complex, dark, brooding, and so on and so forth. I don't have those written down here, but he was on all these very interesting kind of subplot, kind of under the kind of exploratory type, dark and brooding, even back in the 60s shows. And they found interest in that, and that's where they kind of pulled him up from doing all that in the 60s and then brought him to the forefront of where he's in Star Trek.
That's weird because you don't think of Kirk as dark or brooding at all.
You don't. There's some episodes and things that he was in that he was kind of that way, but not... You take him as this, he's smiling, okay, we're up against the entire fleet or whatever, we're not going to win. Oh, yes, we are.
Right.
He's that guy.
Mm-hmm.
Give me the ball. Give me the damn ball. Let's go.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Lifesaver. Anyway. Basically, let's see. Spock has greenish skin, yet was supposed to be red. He was supposed to have red skin.
That would have been frightening.
Here's my only problem with that. With red, a color like red or something, you can't really...
How do you not relate that to the devil?
Yeah, to bad, evil.
Yeah. Red means stop.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, the octagon signs that we deal with every day.
Mm-hmm.
Good point. But like I said, it was going to be red.
That's terrible.
But even in the bad days of grainy, color and all this other stuff on TV, how is that going to work?
Yeah, it wouldn't have worked very well.
How much you want to bet the guy that came up with that idea was no longer part of the creative process?
It's not necessarily a bad idea, but
no. I mean, yeah.
I'm glad that he turned out the way that he did.
So let's do sketches of everyone because, of course, we don't have technology. It's Star Trek. And no. Pull out the crayon box. No, let's get the darkest red color we can. We'll make that Spock.
Well, it's not our stories to tell. Who are we to judge?
We're not judging. We're just saying. Yeah. So William Shatner, Leonard Nimoy both got tinnitus on the set of Star Trek.
No, really, that's why.
Tinnitus. From all the high pitches and bells and all the other stuff going on, I guess.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, from all the loud sound. Because, again, back then, it wasn't green screens and it wasn't
and it
all
wasn't
that technology.
added later. It was right then and there.
Right.
That's wild.
So this is like 1966 or something like that. And they kind of came up with the series. So, again, you had to create everything.
That's
you had
wild.
to have amazing creativity and amazing just amazing way in which to come up with everything. I mean, think about that.
Yeah,
Crazy.
No, that's unique.
A lot of Star Trek technology became reality. Props on the set became real, such as cell phones. Mm-hmm. They had, of course, with the transcorders or
transporter? Communicators? Yep.
Communicators. All right, so they had the earpieces in their ears. Those might be Bluetooth.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, I'll sum it up with, they basically had over 20 devices and things through the entire process of their show that became reality. Today. And earlier, you had talked about that. You said a lot of the stuff they dealt with on Star Trek was stuff that really could be possible today.
From what I understand, you talk to scientists about a lot of the things before they would put it on the screen, so that way it was always something that was scientifically possible that could happen. Even the time traveling might be far-fetched notion, still possible.
Yep. But so, like I said, okay, and how I relegated to this is also something else to think about in that process. The show The Jetsons, the cartoon The Jetsons. A lot of the things in the cartoon The Jetsons also were things that they also used that you could use in today's world.
Not the flying cars yet.
Flying cars, they're working on that.
Working on
a little pill they pop in a microwave, and the next thing you know,
is that
it's a
here yet?
Meal. Well, no.
Okay.
No.
No, it's
but
awesome.
A lot of the
concept,
concepts and things, like I said, that's how I kind of look at it too.
That'd be cool.
But that's an amazing part.
I'd love that.
Basically, I did something. I did a biopic on Gene Roddenberry and George Lucas. I'm not going to go through and read them. Basically, it's covering their history, how they got started out. Again, both of them they found their ways. They had their vision boards and all that.
Things have gotten. I mean, to even try and define it through these two men is it's gotten so much bigger than them. So I mean, not that the creators are obviously the creators, but almost inconsequential anymore because their visions have gone. It's not their visions anymore. Right.
Everything's done on 180 basically is what you're saying. Yeah, it's important to know that Gene Roddenberry, of course, was the creator of Star Trek and George Lucas was the creator of Star Wars. But they started their humble beginnings were way over here in this other little town, and now they're in the metropolis. They are the metropolis.
Yep.
You're saying.
Beautiful. Yep. Well said.
Thank you. So anyway, what do you think?
I had a great time.
So you had a first chance to get on your first podcast.
Yep.
You listened to them. You said you love them.
Love listening to podcasts.
And here you are.
Yeah, I love doing it. It was a great time.
Awesome.
Got to put a lot of thought, or some of my thoughts in Star Wars. Not a lot of them, but got to put it on the tape, and that's fun.
And it's a lot of information that I didn't know. I mean, you brought out some stuff that, I mean, even if you're out there and you're listening and you hear this episode, let me tell you something. It's amazing that he's able to get out here and get his message out. And everyone has the same opportunity to do everything. It's some people that take such deep care and in the process of doing something that it's important to know and listen to. And that's what it makes it. That's the value for all of us. Out there listening, if you're even a hardcore fan of Star Wars or whatever else is going on, you're probably going to pick up a few things, and that's all we do. The only way to truly learn is to learn by talking to other people and drawing from their experience in something else. And that's how we all become cultured and we become well-rounded as a person.
Well said.
Sound good?
Yes, sir.
All right. So anyway, thanks again, everybody, for being out there. Appreciate you. And I'll be going to the close-up right now. But anyway, again, go out there, tell other people about the podcast. If it's your first time listening, thank you for being here. Thank you for getting into this opportunity. Go back and check out the rest of the episodes I have. If you're back here again listening, or if you're people like Chris here that it goes through and listens to all the episodes, I thank you for being here. You matter, and this entire process is all about everyone else out there. Again, it's your podcast. I'm the host. Appreciate all of you. All right, once again, this has been the 55th episode of the Arena of Ideas podcast. Your podcast, I'm the host. I hope you appreciated this opportunity once again for the fourth installment of a conversation with somebody else, getting other voices. I want other voices on here, other ideas on here. I want everything else out there to matter and everyone else out there to be a part of what this is. This is your podcast, so please, by all means, let's get more people on here. Thanks again for Chris and what he did and his contributions. And this is only part one with him. Plan on seeing him more on other involvements dealing with other topics of discussion. Okay? So again, 55th episode. It's Chatting and Chilling with Chris, part one, Star Trek and Star Wars. All right, so until next time, this has been your host, Mike Kingston of the AOI podcast, your podcast. Have the best of the rest of your day, and until next time.